Another homeless person again. William Hartman lifted one gloved hand to cover his mouth, partly because of the cold, and partly out of the habit of a man who had learned to hide his emotions behind small gestures. He muttered, I suppose that's true. He slowed his steps near the old stone entrance of the train station. Beside him, Max, his aging golden retriever, suddenly stopped so abruptly that the leather leash in William's hand pulled tight. William glanced down at him. Max, come on. But Max did not move. He stood still, his old eyes fixed on the far end of the station steps. Late afternoon in Chicago had its own kind of cold. The sky was not fully dark yet, but the warmth of the day had already drained away. Commuters moved in steady lines through the station doors, shoulders slumped, coffee cups in hand, eyes fixed on their phones or the train schedule. At the edge of the steps, half hidden behind a concrete pillar, a young black girl sat curled up tightly. Her knees were pulled against her chest, and her arms were wrapped around herself. The coat on her shoulders was far too thin for the winter wind. Her old shoes were worn down on both sides. A faded backpack rested against her feet, as if she were afraid that if she looked away for even 1 second, someone might take the last thing she had left. Max pulled on the leash again. Leave it alone, William said quietly. The girl did not lift her head. She reached into her backpack and took out a carefully folded piece of paper. She opened it with both hands, slowly and gently, as if it was not just a piece of paper, but something sacred. William had been about to turn away, but at that moment, the girl let out a sob. It was not loud, not dramatic, just a small sound, breaking loose after too much effort to hold it back. She stared at the letter, her lips pressed together. Her eyes moved over the first lines. Though William could tell from her expression that she had read them so many times, she probably knew every word by heart. Then she folded the letter once, very slowly, then again. After that, she pressed it against her chest as if she were trying to keep a dream from slipping out of her hands. Another sob escaped her. This time, it sounded deeper. William frowned. What's wrong with that girl, he murmured. Did some boy leave her with a letter and a broken heart? Max looked up at him with an expression that almost seemed reproachful. William let out a breath. All right, fine, we'll ask. He walked toward the girl. His expensive leather shoes made a soft sound against the damp stone. This time, he did not stop too far away. He stood beside her, close enough for Max to lower his head and sniff her worn-out shoes. William lowered his voice. Hey, are you all right? The girl startled. She quickly wiped her face with her sleeve, then pulled her thin coat tighter around herself. But the fabric was too light to fight the wind. Her shoulders kept trembling, not only from tears, but from the cold that had already settled deep into her body. I'm fine, sir, she said, though her voice was clearly shaking. I'm okay. William glanced down at the folded paper in her hand. You don't look okay. Before she could answer, a young couple sitting on a nearby bench turned toward them. The woman held a paper coffee cup between both hands. The man beside her wore a brown coat, one arm resting behind her. We saw her earlier, the woman said gently. She's been going around looking for work. The man nodded. The coffee shop, the sandwich place, the little store by the ticket machines. She told them she was about to start college and needed money before classes began. The woman looked at Annie with compassion she was trying not to show too openly. Sweetheart, did anyone hire you? The girl lowered her head and shook it slightly. The woman held out the coffee cup a little, not forcing it on her, just offering a small kindness. Would you like this? It's still warm. It might help you calm down before you keep looking. The girl looked at the cup, then at the woman. For 1 second, William thought she might take it, but she only shook her head, embarrassment clear on her face. Thank you, ma'am, she said. I'm okay. Are you sure? The woman asked. The girl nodded, but another sob caught in her throat. I'm sorry. The woman's face softened. Don't apologize. Everybody has a day that becomes too much. William looked from the young couple back to the girl. You're looking for work? She nodded again, both arms still wrapped tightly around herself. I tried. What kind of work? Anything legal? The answer was so blunt that the young man on the bench lowered his head. Washing dishes, cleaning, wiping tables, stocking shelves. I told them I could work evenings, early mornings, weekends. I told them I learned fast. And no one hired you? No, sir. She wiped her tears with her sleeve. Some said they weren't hiring. Some said they needed experience. One man asked if I had references, like I was applying to run the whole company instead of just mop the floor. William heard the bitterness in her voice. The woman on the bench murmured, "That's a shame." The girl pressed the folded letter against her chest. "I guess it's not their fault. Everybody wants someone already trained, already ready, already easy to choose." William looked down at Max. The old dog had settled his chin near the girl's worn shoes, as if he had chosen his side long ago. "What's your name?" William asked. She hesitated. "Annie Carter." "I'm William Hartman." Annie looked at his expensive wool coat, his polished shoes, the watch half hidden under his cuff. "You don't look like the kind of man who usually stops to ask girls like me about work." William nodded once. "You're probably right." Annie seemed surprised that he admitted it. She looked back down at Max. "Your dog is kinder than most of the people I met today. He has a habit of being right before I am. He's old. According to my doctor, so am I." The faintest hint of a smile nearly appeared on Annie's face, but it faded the moment she looked back at the letter in her hand. William nodded toward it. "Is that a college acceptance letter?" Annie carefully opened the letter, just enough for him to see the heading. "I got accepted," she said. "That's something to be proud of." Annie's back straightened slightly. "I am proud. I earned it. I kept my grades up. I stayed out of trouble. I studied after work, after helping at home. Even after putting my little sister to sleep, I did everything adults tell you to do when they come to school and talk about opportunity." William listened in silence. Annie tightened her grip on the letter. "They make it sound so simple. Work hard, stay focused, dream big. But nobody tells you what to do when your dream comes with a bill." William asked quietly, "How much do you need?" Annie immediately shook her head. "I'm not asking you for money. I didn't say you were. I know. I just had to say it first, before people misunderstood." "Misunderstood what?" "That I'm sitting here crying because I want somebody to give me something." She lifted her chin, even though tears still clung to her lashes. "I came here to find work. I wanted to earn it myself." William looked toward the station doors, then back at her. "What about your family?" Annie released a shaky breath. She seemed unsure whether she should tell a stranger about her life. But then the words began to come out, uneven, honest, and difficult to stop. "My mother works all the time," she said. She folded the letter again, slower this time. "My mother remarried. My stepfather's name is Raymond. He drinks. He talks big. He can't keep a job for long. But he always has plenty to say about everyone else. After my little sister, Lily, was born, everything got harder. More bills, less space, more noise. Lily is only 5. None of this is her fault." The woman on the bench whispered. "Poor child. I told my mother to leave him," Annie continued. "I told her we could figure things out ourselves. But she said Raymond is Lily's father. She said she's too tired to start over." William heard no judgment in Annie's voice, only pain that had been repeated too many times. "I got the letter today," Annie said. "I thought maybe my mother would be happy." And she was. For a moment. I saw it. Then Raymond laughed. He asked who was going to pay for it. He said people like us don't go to places like that. He said I was acting like I was better than my own family. Her lips pressed tight. "And your mother?" William asked softly. Annie turned her face away. She didn't defend me. Then she said maybe I could wait a year. "A year," William repeated. Annie looked back at him. "People say that like it costs nothing. Just wait a year. Help the family for 1 more year. Save money for 1 more year. But where I come from, 1 year turns into rent. Groceries, somebody's medicine, somebody's car repair, somebody needing help with childcare. Then one day, you're not waiting anymore. You're stuck, and everyone acts like it was your choice." The young couple fell silent. The woman still held the coffee cup, but her hand lowered, as if she understood that what Annie was carrying inside her was heavier than any cold. Annie wiped her tears. "So I came here. I thought if I found a job tonight, I could go home and show my mother I had a plan, a real plan. But nobody hired me." Her voice caught again. "I don't want to wake up 10 years from now and realize I'm still waiting for my turn to live." William felt something shift quietly inside his chest. "Do you have somewhere safe to go tonight?" he asked. Annie looked toward the street outside the station, where buses hissed along the curb and people hurried past one another, everyone on their way somewhere. I have somewhere to go, she said, but that doesn't mean it's safe. The woman on the bench looked at William, then at Annie. A train announcement echoed over the speakers. She stood with the young man, but paused before leaving. Sweetheart, she said, I truly hope you make it there. Annie nodded. Thank you, ma'am. The couple walked into the station. When they disappeared into the crowd, that corner of the steps seemed colder than before. William remained beside Annie. Max did not move. If I go home, Annie said after a while, Raymond will start something again. He'll say I think I'm better than them. He'll ask where I've been. He'll tell my mother I'm ungrateful, disrespectful, out of line, and my mother will stand there with that look on her face, like she wants to help but doesn't know how. She closed her eyes for a moment. I don't hate her, Annie said. I really don't, but I can't keep shrinking my life just so his can look bigger. William looked at the neatly folded letter in her hand, then at the station doors behind him. A few minutes earlier, he had almost walked through those doors and left her there. The thought unsettled him. Slowly, he reached into his coat pocket and took out his phone. Annie immediately stepped back. I'm not getting into a stranger's car. You shouldn't, William replied. She blinked. What? You shouldn't get into a stranger's car. That would be dangerous. Then why are you taking out your phone? I'm going to call someone you can speak to first. Her name is Evelyn Moore. She manages my house, keeps everything in order, and before that, she taught elementary school for 30 years. She is older than I am, wiser than I am, and not easily impressed by me. Annie stared at him, still trembling, still uncertain. If you don't like what she says, William continued, you can walk away. No pressure, no forced questions. I can call a women's center, a church, a safe shelter, anywhere that makes you feel more comfortable. But I will not leave you sitting out here in the cold with a college acceptance letter in your hand and nowhere safe to go. Annie looked down at Max. The old dog still lay there, his head resting near her shoes, loyal to a girl he had known for less than 10 minutes. Why? She asked. William glanced back toward the station doors. Because 5 minutes ago I almost walked past you, he said, and I don't like what that says about me. Annie wiped her face with her sleeve. She did not say yes. She did not say no, but she did not run away. William dialed Evelyn's number. Evelyn Moore answered on the 4th ring. Good evening, Mr. Hartman. William heard the faint sound of a television in the background, followed almost immediately by the soft click of it being turned off. Evelyn, he said, turning slightly away from the wind sweeping across the station steps. I'm outside the train station with a young woman named Annie Carter. She needs a warm place to stay for the night. There was a brief silence on the other end, not long enough to be judgment. Just long enough for Evelyn to understand that there was more behind that sentence than William had said aloud. Is she with you voluntarily, sir? William looked at Annie. She was still sitting on the steps, one hand holding her folded acceptance letter, the other resting near Max's head. Her eyes followed him cautiously, like someone who had learned that kindness could come with conditions. She hasn't agreed to anything yet, William said. I told her she could speak with you first. That was a wise decision. I do have my moments. Yes, sir. Evelyn replied with the careful patience of a woman who did not wish to encourage him too much. Please give her the phone. William held the phone out to Annie. It's Mrs. Moore. You don't have to say anything you don't want to say. Annie looked at the phone as if it might turn into something else in her hand. After a few seconds, she took it. Hello? William could not make out Evelyn's words. He could only hear the steady, calm rhythm of her voice. At first, Annie's shoulders remained tense. She answered only in short sentences. Yes, ma'am. A strong gust of wind swept across the steps. Annie pulled her coat tighter around herself and kept listening. After a while, her eyes shifted toward William. Something in her expression changed. It was not full trust, but at least she no longer looked like someone preparing to run. Annie handed the phone back to him. William pressed it to his ear. Well, she may come for dinner, Mr. Hartman, Evelyn said. One dinner. In the first-floor sitting room. I will be present when she arrives. I'll prepare a bed, clean towels, and something hot to eat. No questions until she is ready. Absolutely no assumptions. Yes, ma'am, William said before he could think better of it. Evelyn allowed that small victory to pass without comment. And sir, yes? Do not bring that child into the house as someone who needs to be rescued. Welcome her as a guest. William looked at Annie again. She had lowered her head and was gently scratching behind Max's ear. "I understand. I hope you do, Mr. Hartman." "I'll make soup." The line went dead. William slipped the phone back into his coat pocket. "Mrs. Moore says there will be soup." Annie looked up at him. "Does she always talk to you like that?" "Like what?" "Like she's the one in charge." William glanced toward the street, then nodded. "Usually she is." A few minutes later, a black car pulled up to the curb. William's driver, Thomas, stepped out and opened the rear door, then paused when he saw Annie. He was wise enough not to ask any questions. Annie stayed where she was. William did not move toward the car first. "You can sit by the door. Max can sit between us if you want. Thomas has been driving for me for 12 years. Mrs. Moore will be at the house when we arrive. Keep your phone. Keep your backpack. If at any point you want to leave, just say so." Annie looked at the car, then at the station, and finally down at the letter in her hand. "I don't know you." "No. And you don't have to pretend that you do. I don't know her either." "That's true. And rich people usually don't do things for free." William gave a small nod. "You're right to be careful." That answer seemed to unsettle her more than any promise would have. Max stood, shook himself slowly, and looked back at Annie, as if waiting for her decision. Annie let out a quiet breath. "Just one night?" "One night. No pictures, no reporters, no calling anyone unless I say you can. No pictures, no reporters, no calls unless you agree. And I'm not signing anything." "Not tonight." She narrowed her eyes. "Why did you say it like that?" "Because if you need help with school later, there may be forms to fill out, but not tonight." Annie stared at him for a long moment. Then she stood. Her knees were stiff from sitting too long on the cold stone. She had to place one hand against the pillar to steady herself. William did not reach for her. He saw the instinct in her body, the way she was ready to flinch away from help even when she clearly needed it. Annie walked to the car on her own. Inside, she sat close to the door, her backpack on her lap, the acceptance letter tucked inside her coat. Max climbed in after her, settled at her feet, and sighed like a tired old man who had finally gotten what he wanted. The ride through Chicago was quiet at first. The city appeared in pieces through the window. Storefront lights, damp pavement, figures hurrying beneath awnings, distant car horns mixed with the wind slipping through the cracks. Annie kept her eyes on the glass. William sat across from her, giving her the only kind of silence he thought he could offer. After several blocks, Annie spoke without looking at him. "Is she your wife?" "No, she manages my house." "You mean a maid?" "I mean the house would collapse without her, and she is kind enough to let me pretend I still control anything." Annie glanced at him, as if trying to decide whether he was mocking himself or pretending to be humble. She seemed to lean toward the first. When the car turned onto a quieter street lined with old buildings and private entrances, Annie's shoulders tightened again. The car stopped in front of a stone townhouse with black railings and warm light glowing from the windows. It was not William's largest property, not even close, but to Annie, it must have looked like another world entirely. Thomas opened the door. Annie stepped out slowly, clutching her backpack to her chest. Max jumped down after her and leaned against her leg, as if reminding her that in this place, at least, she had one ally. The front door opened before they reached it. Evelyn Moore stood on the threshold. She wore a dark blue wool cardigan over a house dress. Her silver hair was pinned neatly at the back of her head, and her glasses hung from a thin chain around her neck. She looked at Annie first. She did not glance over her. She did not look through her. And she did not look at her with pity. "Good evening, Miss Carter," Evelyn said. "I'm Mrs. Moore. You must be very cold." Annie's voice was much smaller now. "Yes, ma'am. There is chicken soup in the kitchen. The bread is warming in the oven. There is tea if you would like some. You may wash your hands first or sit down first. Your choice." Annie blinked at the last two words. "Your choice." William stepped in behind her. "Evelyn, thank you. You're welcome, Mr. Hartman." Her tone remained respectful, but her eyes made it very clear that she would be speaking with him later. "Please take Max's leash and hang up your coat. I will attend to Miss Carter." William obeyed. Annie stood just inside the door, looking down at the polished floor, then at the framed photographs, the staircase, and the lights. Her shoes were soaked. She stood there as if she were afraid that one more step might dirty something that did not belong to her. Evelyn noticed immediately. "Floors can be cleaned, sweetheart," she said. "People are harder to mend. Come inside." Something in Annie's face shifted. She stepped forward. In the kitchen, the smell of soup filled the room. It was not a fancy meal. Just chicken, carrots, celery, onion, and a little pepper. But it was the kind of meal that did more than warm the stomach. It tried to warm the place where fear had stayed too long. Evelyn placed a bowl of soup on the small table near the window, not in the formal dining room. She set a cloth napkin beside it. Then, after noticing Annie's trembling hands, quietly replaced it with a paper one. "Sit wherever you feel comfortable," Evelyn said. Annie sat on the edge of the chair. William stood near the doorway until Evelyn looked at him. "Mr. Hartman, would you like coffee?" He understood the meaning beneath the question. Let this child have room to breathe. "Yes," he said. "Perhaps in the study." "That would be best, sir." Annie quickly lifted her head, perhaps afraid he was leaving her alone in a strange house. Evelyn noticed that too. "He will be just down the hall," she said. "I will be here. And Max will crawl under the table and beg for chicken he is not allowed to have." At the sound of his name, Max walked into the kitchen and sat beside Annie's chair with great dignity. Finally, Annie picked up the spoon. William stood in the doorway for one more second, then turned toward the study. Behind him, Evelyn's voice softened, but it did not weaken. "Eat first, Miss Carter. The hard things can wait until after soup." William stopped in the hallway for a moment. He looked back into the kitchen and saw Annie leaning over the bowl of soup. One hand still rested on the strap of her backpack. The other held the spoon awkwardly and carefully, as if she had forgotten what it felt like to receive something without having to explain why she needed it. If this scene touched your heart, please like this video. Tell us in the comments where you are watching from, and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories about kindness, hope, and second chances. William did not open his laptop in the study. He sat behind the desk, coffee cooling near his right hand, and listened, not to words exactly. The kitchen was far enough down the hall that he could not make out every sentence. He heard the low rhythm of Evelyn's voice, the scrape of a chair, the soft click of Max's nails against the floor, then Annie answering in short pieces. "Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. Thank you." He had hosted senators in that house, investors from London, men who spoke about neighborhoods as if no one lived inside them. The rooms had absorbed polished shoes, rehearsed laughs, expensive coats laid over chairbacks. But one girl eating soup in the kitchen made the whole place feel less like property and more like a home being asked to prove itself. After a while, Evelyn appeared at the study door. "Mr. Hartman." He stood at once. He had not meant to, but Evelyn noticed and pretended not to. "How is she?" She ate half the bowl. "That's enough for now. She's exhausted." I put a towel and clean clothes in the downstairs guest room. I found one of Grace's old college sweatshirts in the linen closet. "I hope you don't mind." The name moved through the room quietly. William looked toward the framed photograph on the side table, Grace laughing in a yellow raincoat, one hand raised against the camera. "No, I don't mind." She asked before touching the glass of water, Evelyn said. William frowned. "What?" She asked if she could drink the water I set in front of her. Evelyn folded her hands at her waist. "That tells me a great deal." William looked down at his coffee. "About what?" "About the kind of house she came from." He said nothing. Evelyn's voice stayed respectful, but it did not soften. "Sir, she does not need to be interrogated tonight. She needs sleep. In the morning, you may ask what is necessary. Not everything you are curious about is necessary. I know. I hope you do." He looked up. "Have I become that bad?" Evelyn took a breath. "You have become used to distance, Mr. Hartman. Distance can make a decent man careless." That struck harder than criticism would have. He nodded once. "I'll be careful." "Good. She is not a project." "No," he said. "She isn't." Evelyn stepped aside as Annie came down the hall, carrying her backpack against her front. The sweatshirt was folded over one arm. Her face had been washed, but her eyes were still swollen from crying. She stopped when she saw William, as if unsure whether she was allowed to pass through the hallway without permission. "The guest room is this way," Evelyn said. "First floor. You can lock the door from inside. There's a bathroom across the hall. I placed extra blankets on the chair." Annie nodded. "Thank you, Mrs. Moore." "You're welcome," William said. "Annie." She looked at him. "I'll be in the study a while. Evelyn's room is upstairs at the back. Max will probably sleep wherever he's least useful." At his name, Max lifted his head from the rug. Annie's mouth moved toward a smile. "He can stay near the door if he wants. He'll consider that an invitation." She looked down at the folded sweatshirt. Mrs. Moore said this was okay. "It is. I don't want to take anything that matters." William felt the old room in his chest open again. "It was my daughter's. Her name was Grace." Annie's grip tightened. "I can use something else." "No." His voice came out rougher than he intended. He corrected it. "No. It's all right." She would have liked the idea of someone wearing it because they were cold. Annie studied him for a second, seeing more than he wished she did. "Thank you." Evelyn guided her to the room. That night, William did not sleep well. He went upstairs, changed clothes, stood at his bedroom window looking at the city lights, then came back down before midnight to check the locks. He found Max asleep in the hallway outside the guest room, his body stretched across the doorway like a furry old guard. William stood there for a moment and heard nothing from inside. No crying, no movement, just the hush of a girl sleeping behind a locked door in a house that had once been built to keep the world out. In the morning, the kitchen smelled of coffee, toast, and bacon. Evelyn believed in breakfast the way other people believed in policy. Annie was already at the table when William entered, sitting upright, hair pulled back, hands folded around a glass of orange juice she had not touched. Grace's sweatshirt hung a little loose on her shoulders. "Good morning," William said. "Good morning, sir." "William is fine." She looked at Evelyn. Evelyn poured coffee without looking up. "Mr. Hartman is also fine until Miss Carter decides otherwise." William accepted that. "Mr. Hartman, then." Annie glanced at the plate in front of her. Scrambled eggs, toast, bacon, and orange slices. Mrs. Moore made too much. "I made breakfast," Evelyn said. "That is different." Annie picked up her fork. "Yes, ma'am." For a few minutes, they ate without speaking much. William noticed Annie watching how Evelyn used the butter knife before taking any butter herself. She was learning the room, the rules, the safest way to exist in it. That knowledge made him uncomfortable, not with her, but with every adult who had taught her to be that careful. When Evelyn stepped to the sink, William said, "You mentioned last night that you were accepted to college. Which school?" Annie swallowed before answering. "Lakeview State." "It's not Ivy League or anything." "I didn't ask if it was Ivy League." "I know. People just usually ask that next." "Lakeview State is a good school." Her eyes lifted. "You know it? I funded a library renovation there 8 years ago. Never visited after the ribbon cutting, which tells you something unflattering about me." Annie looked unsure how to respond. "What do you want to study?" he asked. "Education, maybe social work. I go back and forth." "Why those?" She looked at her plate. "Because I know what it feels like when a kid needs one adult in the room who is paying attention." Evelyn turned off the faucet quietly. William sat with that answer. "That's a strong reason. It's not fancy. Strong is better than fancy." Annie pushed a piece of egg with her fork. "The problem is the deposit comes first. Then housing. Books. Meal plan. The aid letter helped, but not enough. I saved some money, but it wasn't close. I figured if I could get a job fast, maybe I could show the school I was serious. Maybe they'd give me time." "Did you call the financial aid office?" "I tried. I was on hold during lunch at school, then at the laundromat, then yesterday outside the diner. When I finally got somebody, she told me to check the portal." Annie gave a tired little shrug. "The portal says I owe money." William almost smiled at the bleak accuracy of it, then did not. "That sounds about right." "I can work," Annie said quickly. "I'm not afraid of that. I've watched kids, cleaned church basements, helped Mrs. Alvarez downstairs when her arthritis got bad. I just don't have paperwork that makes it look like experience." Evelyn set a second piece of toast near Annie's plate. "Many capable people lack paperwork. That has never stopped incapable people from collecting titles." William looked at Evelyn. "Was that directed at anyone in particular?" "Not this morning, sir." Annie lowered her head, but he saw the smile. The house phone rang before William could ask more. Evelyn answered it from the counter. Hartman residence. Her posture changed. "One moment, please." She covered the receiver and looked at Annie. "It is your mother." Annie went still. William stood. "We can give you privacy." Annie looked at the phone as if it were already speaking Raymond's voice. "No. It's okay." Evelyn brought the receiver to the table but did not hover. Annie took it. "Mama?" The kitchen became very quiet. "Yes, I'm okay." Annie listened, eyes fixed on the table. "No, he didn't do anything. I told you. I'm okay." A pause. "I didn't run off with anybody. I was at the station. I was trying to find work." Her fingers tightened around the receiver. "Mama, please don't put him on." William's hand closed around the back of his chair. Annie shut her eyes. In the faint crackle of the phone, a man's voice pushed through, loud enough for William to hear tone if not every word. Annie's face hardened, then folded. "No," she said. "I'm not being disrespectful. I just needed somewhere to sleep." She swallowed. "Don't call it that. Don't say I'm acting grown because I want to go to school." Evelyn looked at William once. A warning. "Stay still." Annie listened. Her eyes filled, but she did not cry this time. "I'll talk to Mama later," she said. "Not while you're yelling." She hung up before whatever came next could reach her. For a moment, no one spoke. The bacon cooled on the plates. Max, sensing the change, came from under the table and pressed his side against Annie's knee. Annie stared at the receiver in her hand, then set it down carefully. "I should go," she said. Evelyn answered before William could. "You should finish your breakfast." Annie gave a broken little laugh. "Mrs. Moore, you didn't hear him. I heard enough. If I don't go back, he'll make it worse for my mom." William kept his voice measured. "And if you do go back," Annie looked at him, "then at least I know what happens." That was the kind of sentence no young woman should have learned to say. William sat back down, slowly. "Annie, I am not going to tell you what to do. But before you decide, let me make one call to Lakeview State. Not to buy anything. Not to speak over you. Just to ask what options exist." She looked skeptical. "People like you make calls and things happen." "Sometimes," he said. "Sometimes people like me make calls and create bigger problems because we think we know the answer before we understand the question." Evelyn's eyebrows rose slightly, approving despite herself. William continued. "So we do it your way. You sit there. You hear everything. If I say something wrong, you stop me." Annie looked at the cold toast, then at the letter she had placed beside her plate. The paper looked smaller in daylight, more ordinary, and somehow more fragile. "I don't want charity," she said. "I know. I mean it. I believe you." She drew a breath that shook less than before. One call, William said. Evelyn picked up Annie's plate and replaced the cold toast with warm. "Then eat. Colleges can wait 10 minutes. A hungry girl should not negotiate her future on an empty stomach." Annie looked at her, then at William, then down at Max. For the first time since the station, she did not clutch the backpack against her chest. She let it rest beside the chair, close enough to reach, but not in her arms. William noticed. So did Evelyn. No one mentioned it. The call to Lakeview State did not happen at the kitchen table. Annie had been ready for it there, sitting upright with the acceptance letter beside her plate and Max pressed against her ankle. But Evelyn looked at William over the rim of her coffee cup and said, "Mr. Hartman, official conversations do not belong next to cooling eggs." So they moved to the small sitting room off the hall, the one William rarely used because it had no desk, no conference screen, and no excuse to become an office. Evelyn brought Annie a legal pad and a pen from the kitchen drawer. Annie looked at them as if she had been handed tools rather than paper. "You may want to write things down," Evelyn said. Annie nodded. "Yes, ma'am." William sat in the armchair across from her and placed his phone on speaker only after asking. Annie agreed, but her shoulders stayed tight. She had dealt with offices before, school offices, clinic offices, apartment offices, places where people said policy in the tone of a locked door. William dialed the admissions number printed at the bottom of the letter. The first voice was a recording. The second was a student worker who transferred them. The third asked for Annie's student ID, which she found after unfolding the letter with hands she tried to keep steady. "This is Annie Carter," she said, leaning toward the phone. I'm calling about my enrollment deposit and financial aid package. William said nothing. He kept his hands folded and let her speak. The woman on the other end sounded polite but rushed. Annie explained that she had been accepted, that she intended to enroll, that she needed to know whether there was any extension available for the deposit. What is your family's expected contribution? The woman asked. Annie glanced at William, then at the paper in her lap. It says here, but that number isn't real for us. I understand, the woman said, in a way that made it unclear whether she did. My mom works hourly, Annie said. Her hours change. My stepfather doesn't contribute steady income. I have some savings, but not enough for the deposit and housing. There was typing on the other end. The deposit deadline is next Friday, the woman said. You can submit an appeal through the portal. I tried. It says the form is unavailable. Try clearing your browser cache. Annie closed her eyes. William looked at Evelyn. Evelyn gave him a look that meant not yet. Annie tried again. Ma'am, I don't have a laptop right now. I've been using my phone and the library computer when I can get there. The form works best on desktop. I understand that, but if I can't access it before next Friday, will my spot be gone? There was another pause. I can't guarantee housing after the deadline. Annie's face tightened. Not anger. Something worse. The effort not to beg. William leaned forward. May I ask a question? Annie looked at him. He waited. She nodded once. This is William Hartman, he said. I'm here with Miss Carter. I am not calling to override her. I need to understand the process. Is there a named counselor in financial aid who handles emergency deposit appeals? The tone on the other end shifted slightly. Not warm, but more alert. Mr. Hartman, are you a family member? No. Then I can't discuss details without student permission. You have it, Annie said quickly. I give permission. Verbal permission may be limited. We would need a release form. Evelyn spoke from her chair. Can that form be emailed directly to Miss Carter? Yes, ma'am. And can the emergency appeal form be sent as a PDF if the portal is not functioning for her? A pause. I believe so. Thank you, Evelyn said, as if the woman had offered tea instead of basic cooperation. By the time the call ended, Annie had 3 names, 2 email addresses, 1 PDF form coming, and no promise. She wrote everything down carefully, pressing hard enough that the pen left marks on the next page. When William hung up, she did not look relieved. That was a lot of nothing, she said. It was a little more than nothing, Evelyn replied. It was names. Annie stared at the legal pad. Names don't pay deposits. No, William said. But names let you call back and ask for the same person. That matters. Annie shook her head. You don't get it. Then tell me. She looked at him, then away. For people like me, 1 missed email can cost you a place. 1 form you don't know about. 1 bus that runs late. 1 password you can't reset because the phone number on the account is old. Everybody says there's help, but the help is always behind another door. William did not answer quickly. Evelyn said, That is true. Annie seemed surprised. Evelyn adjusted her glasses. I taught children whose parents missed meetings because they could not leave work. The school called them uninvolved. I called them tired. Systems often confuse the two. William looked at Evelyn, then at Annie. Then we do not miss the email. Annie gave a small, doubtful laugh. You make it sound easy. No, he said. I make it sound like the next step. The email came 20 minutes later. Evelyn printed the forms from the office off the kitchen while Annie sat at the counter reading every line. William made coffee he did not need and burned the first piece of toast he tried to make for himself. Annie noticed and tried not to smile. You're bad at that, she said. At toast? At pretending you know where things are in your own kitchen. Evelyn did not turn around. He has other qualities. Thank you, Evelyn. I did not say they were useful, sir. This time Annie smiled for real, though it was brief. The forms asked for information that should have been simple but was not. Household income, number of dependents, parent employment, special circumstances. Annie's pen stopped at stepfather income. She tapped the page once, twice. What should I put? She asked. The truth, William said. She looked at him. The truth is, he drinks more than he works. That's not a line on the form. Evelyn pulled out a chair beside her. Then we write. Inconsistent income. No reliable contribution to household expenses. Annie wrote it down. At mother's employment, she wrote hotel housekeeping and part-time kitchen work. At special circumstances, her hand slowed again. The box was small, as if hardship were expected to be tidy. William watched her try to fit a life into 3 inches of space. Use another page, Evelyn said. Can I? Yes. Annie looked at William. He nodded. Use as many pages as you need. She began carefully, but after a few sentences her writing became faster. She wrote about her mother working 2 jobs, about helping with Lily, about saving money a little at a time, about needing campus housing because home was unstable. She did not use dramatic words. She did not call Raymond cruel. She wrote facts, and somehow the facts were worse. Halfway through, her phone buzzed on the counter. The screen lit up with Mama. Annie froze. Evelyn saw it. You do not have to answer immediately. If I don't, she'll worry. Then answer because you choose to, not because fear tells you to. Annie picked up the phone. Hey, Mama. William moved toward the doorway, but Annie shook her head once. Stay. Marlene's voice came through thin and tired. William could not hear all of it, but he heard enough. Where are you? Raymond's upset. Lily keeps asking. You know how he gets. Annie's face folded at Lily's name. I'm okay, she said. I'm with Mrs. Moore and Mr. Hartman. I told you that. A pause. No, Mama. I'm not being disrespectful. I'm filling out school forms. Another pause. Longer this time. Mama, Annie said softly. Did he take the cash from the blue envelope? The kitchen went still. William looked at Evelyn. Annie closed her eyes. Please don't lie to me. Marlene must have answered, because Annie's hand tightened around the phone. How much? Annie whispered. Silence. All of it? Her mouth opened as if the air had been knocked from her. Mama, that was my deposit money. Evelyn's hand moved toward Annie's shoulder, then stopped, giving her the dignity of space. Annie listened, tears rising but not falling yet. No. Don't say he needed it. Don't say that. I needed it too. For the first time since William had met her, anger broke through the exhaustion. I worked for that money. I skipped lunch for that money. I watched Mrs. Landry's twins every Saturday for that money. I cleaned church bathrooms after fish fries for that money. He didn't need it more because he yelled louder. Marlene said something. Annie's face changed from anger to hurt. I know you're tired, she said. I know. But I'm tired too. She ended the call slowly, not hanging up in rage, just lowering the phone as if it had become too heavy. No one spoke. Then Annie folded the appeal form in half, though it was not finished. I can't go, she said. William kept his voice calm. Annie, no. I can't. I was already short. Now I've got nothing. And if I stay away, he'll punish my mom for it. If I go to school, Lily's stuck there listening to him. If I don't go, at least I can help. Evelyn said, help is not the same as surrender. Annie stood too fast, and the chair scraped the floor. You don't understand. Both of you have rooms and phones and people who answer when you call. I have a mom who won't leave and a little sister who hides when voices get loud. William absorbed the words without defending himself. She was right. His life had doors. Hers had traps disguised as duties. Annie pressed both hands to the counter and lowered her head. When she spoke again, her voice was smaller. I thought if I came home with a job, maybe I could prove it. Maybe I could make them believe college wasn't me abandoning them. William saw Grace's old sweatshirt hanging loose on Annie's shoulders and the unfinished form on the counter. He thought of all the checks he had written to institutions that knew how to thank him in embossed letters. He had mistaken generosity for involvement. Standing in his kitchen with a young woman whose future could be derailed by a stolen envelope of cash, he understood the difference. You are not abandoning them by refusing to drown with them, Evelyn said. Annie looked up, tears finally slipping down her face. Then why does it feel like I am? Because love and guilt often use the same voice, Evelyn said. It takes time to tell them apart. William stepped closer, not crowding her, just enough to be part of the moment. Let me make another call, he said. Annie wiped her face. To who? The director of the Hartman Education Fund. Her expression closed. I told you. I don't want to be bought. I heard you. This would not be me handing you cash from my pocket. This would be an emergency scholarship review. With paperwork, criteria, and people who can say no. They say no all the time. Then we make them explain why. She looked at him, searching for the catch. William said, You earned the acceptance. If there is a way to keep the door open while you stand on your own feet, we find it. If you choose not to take it, that remains your choice. But do not let Raymond make it for you. Annie looked down at the form again. The paper was creased where she had folded it, but not torn. Outside the kitchen window, evening began to settle over the city. In the glass, William could see their reflections. Evelyn steady by the counter. Annie caught between fear and a future. Max sitting at her feet, and himself standing in a room he had lived in for years without ever understanding what it was for. Annie picked up the pen. One call, she said. William nodded. One call. Evelyn reached for the soup pot on the stove. And after that, supper. Futures are difficult enough without low blood sugar. Annie let out a shaky breath that was almost a laugh. William took out his phone, but this time he did not call from a distance. He stood beside Annie at the kitchen counter while she unfolded the form and smoothed it flat with both hands. The director of the Hartman Education Fund did not answer on the first call. William stood beside Annie at the kitchen counter, phone in hand, while the unanswered ring filled the room. Annie kept her eyes on the appeal form, smoothing the top edge again and again until Evelyn gently placed one finger on the paper. You'll wear a hole through it, Miss Carter. Annie pulled her hand back. Sorry, no apology needed. Just save some strength for the people who deserve it. William almost smiled. Then the call went to voicemail. He ended it without leaving a message. Annie looked up. That's it? No. He called again. This time, a woman answered, her voice clipped and professional. Laura Bennett. Laura, it's William Hartman. There was a shift on the line. Not fear. Not exactly. But the sound of a person sitting up straighter. Mr. Hartman? Good evening. I'm sorry to call after hours. No, of course. Is everything all right? William glanced at Annie. I'm here with a student named Annie Carter. She has been accepted to Lakeview State and needs an emergency scholarship review. Annie's jaw tightened at the word scholarship, as if it still sounded too close to charity. Laura was quiet for half a beat. For this fall? Yes, Mr. Hartman. Classes begin very soon. The standard award cycle closed months ago. I understand that, and our emergency fund is limited. We usually require a referral from a school counselor, a completed financial profile, a personal statement, academic records, proof of admission, and board approval for awards beyond $5,000. Annie lowered her eyes as each requirement landed. William did not raise his voice. What can be done tonight? Tonight? Laura sounded as though he had asked her to build a dormitory before breakfast. We can open a preliminary file. Do that. Mr. Hartman, I should also be clear. A file does not guarantee anything. I'm aware. Annie leaned toward the phone. Ma'am? William looked at her, then held the phone lower between them. This is Annie Carter, she said. Laura's voice softened slightly. Hello, Annie. I don't want anyone bending rules because he called you. William stayed still. Annie swallowed. If there's a process, I'll do it. If I don't qualify, then I don't. But I don't want to sit in a room later and have people look at me like I got something I didn't earn. Evelyn's eyes lifted to William for a moment. Laura paused. When she answered, the clipped tone was gone. That is fair. And for what it's worth, the process exists so students can be evaluated. Opening a file is not bending the rules. It allows us to see whether you meet them. Annie let out a breath. Okay, I'll need your acceptance letter, unofficial transcript if you have it, financial aid award, and a written statement explaining the emergency. I can write that. I'm sure you can, William said. She also needs deposit and housing guidance. The deadline is next Friday. That part may be more difficult, Laura said. Lakeview housing fills quickly. Difficult is not the same as impossible. No, sir. But I would rather not promise a young woman something I cannot deliver. Annie looked surprised by that. Respect had a sound when it arrived honestly, and she seemed unused to hearing it. Laura continued, "Send me what you have tonight. I'll review it before morning. Tomorrow we can schedule a formal interview with 2 board members." William looked at Annie. "Tomorrow?" Annie nodded once. "Tomorrow works," he said. "Mr. Hartman," Laura added, careful again, "because of your position with the fund, I recommend that you not sit on the interview panel." "I agree." That seemed to surprise Laura. "Good. I'll email the checklist now." The call ended. Annie stared at the phone after William set it down. She sounded serious. "She is." She also sounded like she could say no. "She can." Annie did not seem comforted, but she did seem to respect it. Evelyn set a bowl of soup near her. "Eat while it is hot." "I don't think I can. You can eat 3 spoons and then decide." Annie took the spoon because Evelyn had a way of making refusal feel unnecessary. William sat at the counter with them instead of retreating to the study. He was learning, slowly, that presence did not need to announce itself. The email arrived within minutes. Evelyn printed the checklist. Annie read it twice. She had the acceptance letter. She could access her transcript through the school portal if she remembered the password. The financial aid award was in her email. The personal statement made her freeze. "What am I supposed to write?" she asked. "The truth," Evelyn said. Annie gave her a look. "Everybody keeps saying that like it's simple." William reached for his coffee, then remembered it was cold. "Start with what you want." "What I want?" Annie looked down. "That sounds selfish." "No," Evelyn said. "It sounds clear." Annie held the pen over a blank page. For nearly a minute, she wrote nothing. Max slept under the table, his tail twitching once, as if he were dreaming of younger legs. Outside, traffic hissed along wet pavement. The house waited. Finally, Annie wrote one sentence. "I want to go to college because I am tired of watching girls from my neighborhood learn how to give up before they learn what they are good at." She stopped, embarrassed, and covered the page with her hand. William looked away, giving her privacy he had not earned the right to invade. Evelyn placed another slice of bread on Annie's plate. "That is a fine beginning." Annie kept writing. She wrote about school libraries that stayed warm in winter, about teachers who noticed when she was absent, about tutoring younger kids at church because she knew what it felt like to be lost and ashamed to ask. She wrote about her mother's hands smelling of bleach and fryer oil. She wrote about Lily falling asleep with crayons in her fist. She wrote about saving money in a blue envelope and finding out it was gone. She did not write Raymond's name at first. Then she crossed out a line and wrote it. "My stepfather, Raymond Cole, took the money I saved for my college deposit. My mother did not stop him. I believe she wanted to. I also believe wanting is not the same as doing." When she finished, she put the pen down and stared at the page. "That makes her sound bad," she said. "Who?" William asked. "My mom." Evelyn sat beside her. "It makes her sound human. I don't want them judging her. They will judge the circumstances," Evelyn said. "Not because you ask them to, but because circumstances matter." Annie rubbed her forehead. "I hate this." "I know. No. I mean, I hate having to tell strangers the worst parts of my life, just to prove I need help." William felt that sentence settle in the room. He thought of grant applications, donor dinners, annual reports with smiling photographs of students whose pain had been polished into inspiration. He had signed those reports. He had not asked what it cost to be turned into a story. "You shouldn't have to perform your hardship," he said. Annie looked at him. He chose the next words carefully. "But until the people with resources learn how to recognize need without making people undress their wounds, paperwork is often the gate. We can at least make sure the truth goes through it intact." Evelyn gave him a quiet nod. It was not praise, but it was close. They worked for 2 hours. Annie found her transcript after resetting a password through an email account she had not used since sophomore year. Evelyn scanned the acceptance letter. William forwarded documents only after Annie reviewed each one. At one point, he typed too quickly and wrote, "Promising disadvantaged student." Annie read it, frowned, and slid the laptop back. "Don't call me that." William looked at the phrase, then at her. "You're right." He deleted it. "What should it say?" he asked. Annie thought. "Accepted student seeking emergency review." He typed exactly that. Near 9 o'clock, Annie's phone buzzed again. "Mama." Annie stared at it until the call stopped. A voicemail appeared, then a text. Please come home. Raymond is mad, but he says he'll calm down if you apologize. Annie's face went flat. Evelyn read the change in her without reading the phone. You do not have to fix his anger. If I don't, she has to listen to it. His anger belongs to him. Annie pushed the phone away. That sounds nice. It is not nice, Evelyn said. It is true. Truth is often less comforting than people expect. William stood. Annie, if you want, we can call your mother together. Not Raymond. Your mother. Annie shook her head. Not tonight. Then not tonight. She'll think I abandoned her. No, Evelyn said, firm enough to stop the room. A daughter going to school is not abandonment. Annie looked at the older woman, and for a second her face trembled like she might become a child again if anyone gave her permission, but she pulled herself back. I'm tired, she said. Then you should sleep, Evelyn replied, before going to the guest room. Annie stood awkwardly near the kitchen doorway. Mr. Hartman? Yes? Thank you for letting me correct that sentence. He understood she meant more than the sentence. Thank you for correcting it. She nodded, then followed Evelyn down the hall with Max padding behind them. William stayed in the kitchen after they left. The laptop remained open on the counter. The application had been submitted at 9:14 p.m. A small confirmation number sat on the screen. Absurdly plain for something carrying so much weight. He poured out his cold coffee and stood at the sink. For years, his money had moved through institutions with his name attached and his heart safely removed. Tonight, one girl had made him delete 2 words. And somehow that felt like the first honest thing he had done with the fund in a long time. His phone buzzed. Laura Bennett had replied. Received. Interview scheduled for 10 a.m. tomorrow. 2 board members available. Please note, due to timing and family instability, this may require additional review. William read the message twice. Family instability. The phrase was clean, official, and far too small for a girl holding a college letter on a train station step while her future shivered in her hands. He turned off the kitchen light, leaving the hall lamp on for Annie. Then he walked toward the study, already knowing he would not sleep much. Upstairs, somewhere in the quiet, Grace's old sweatshirt was being worn by a girl who still had a chance to walk through a door his daughter never got to enter. William sat at his desk, opened a blank page, and began listing every question the board might ask, not because he intended to answer for Annie, because this time, he intended to make sure the room was worthy of hearing her. By 7 the next morning, Annie had already made the bed. Evelyn found her in the guest room smoothing the blanket for the 3rd time, the corners tucked tight enough to pass inspection in a military barracks. Grace's sweatshirt was folded on the chair, not worn, as if Annie had decided she had borrowed comfort long enough. Her backpack sat on the floor beside the bed, zipped and ready. You planning to run before breakfast, Miss Carter? Evelyn asked from the doorway. Annie turned too fast. No, ma'am. I just didn't want to leave the room messy. You slept in it. That is what rooms are for. Annie looked at the blanket. At home, if something's out of place, Raymond starts talking, then this house will have to teach you different habits. Annie did not answer. Evelyn came in and picked up the sweatshirt from the chair. She held it out. It is cold downstairs. I didn't want to keep wearing it. You are not keeping it. You are wearing it. There is a difference. Annie took it slowly. Did Mr. Hartman say it was okay? Mr. Hartman said it was okay last night. I am not in the habit of asking him twice when he has already managed the correct answer once. That made Annie smile before she could stop herself. She pulled the sweatshirt on and followed Evelyn to the kitchen. William was already there, standing by the counter with 2 folders, a legal pad, and a cup of coffee he had not touched. He wore a dark suit, but no tie yet. Max lay under the table, tail thumping when Annie entered. Morning, William said. Good morning. Evelyn set oatmeal, toast, and sliced apples on the table. Sit. The interview is at 10. That gives everyone time to eat and not behave like the world runs on nerves. William looked at Annie. Laura Bennett confirmed 2 board members. One is retired from a community college. The other runs scholarship compliance. Compliance sounds like a person who says no for a living, Annie said. It can be, William replied. It can also keep money from going only to people with friends in the room. Annie sat, considering that. Are you going to be in the interview? No. She looked up quickly. I'll be nearby if you want me, he said. But not on the panel. I do not want anyone thinking you are being pushed through because I'm standing over the table. Annie nodded. But her fingers found the edge of her sleeve and held it. What if they think that, anyway? They may, Evelyn said, pouring coffee for William and tea for herself. People often think wrong things with great confidence. Your task is not to control every thought in the room. Your task is to tell the truth, without apologizing for needing a future. Annie looked down at her oatmeal. That sounds easier when you say it. Most things do, Evelyn said. Then life asks us to practice. They spent the next hour reviewing documents. Annie had her acceptance letter, transcript, aid award, personal statement, and the appeal form. William asked only practical questions. What will you say if they ask why you need campus housing? Annie took a breath. Because home is not stable enough for me to study or stay enrolled. Good. You don't need to explain more unless they ask. What if they ask about Raymond? You answer what is relevant, Evelyn added, and you do not protect a grown man from the consequences of his own behavior. Annie's eyes moved toward her phone on the table. It had buzzed twice before breakfast. She had not looked. That took effort, William could see. At 9:15, Thomas brought the car around. Evelyn insisted on going with them. A young woman should not walk into a room full of decision-makers without someone who knows how decision-makers hide nonsense behind good manners. William opened his mouth, then closed it. Wise choice, sir, Evelyn said. The Hartman Education Fund occupied the 4th floor of a restored brick building not far from the river. The lobby had marble floors, brass fixtures, and framed photographs of smiling students holding books. Annie slowed when she saw them. William noticed. What is it? She looked at the photographs. They all look like they already knew how to be here. Evelyn answered before he could. Photographs lie politely. In the elevator, Annie stood between William and Evelyn, clutching her folder. William could feel her trying to control her breathing. He wanted to tell her she would be fine, but fine was too easy a word, so he said nothing. Laura Bennett met them at reception. She was in her early 40s, neat gray blazer, tablet in hand, face professional without being cold. Miss Carter, she said, offering her hand first to Annie. I'm Laura Bennett. Thank you for coming in. Annie shook her hand. Thank you for seeing me. Of course, Mrs. Moore, Mr. Hartman. Laura nodded respectfully. The panel is ready. Mr. Hartman, as discussed, you'll wait outside. Yes. Annie looked at him. The fear was there, but so was something steadier. William said, You have everything you need. She swallowed. I know. Evelyn touched Annie's elbow lightly. I'll sit behind you unless you ask me not to. Annie nodded. Please. The interview room had a long table, a pitcher of water, and windows overlooking the street. 2 board members sat with printed copies of Annie's file. One was a black woman in her 60s named Dr. Helen Brooks, retired dean from a community college. The other was a white man named Peter Wallace, thin, careful, with reading glasses low on his nose. Laura introduced everyone and took a seat to the side. Annie sat across from them. Evelyn sat behind her, hands folded in her lap. Dr. Brooks began. Miss Carter, I read your personal statement this morning. You write clearly. Thank you. Tell us why Lakeview State. Annie held the folder in her lap but did not open it. Because they have a strong education program. And because I can get there by train if I need to come home. I wanted a school that was far enough for me to grow up, but close enough that my little sister wouldn't feel like I disappeared. Dr. Brooks nodded. Peter Wallace looked at the file. Your grades are strong. Your attendance record is also strong until this last semester, where there are several late arrivals. Annie stiffened. Yes, sir. Can you explain? My mom's work schedule changed. Some mornings I had to get my sister ready and take her to a neighbor before school. Was there no other adult available? Annie's thumb pressed into the folder edge. Not one who was reliable. Peter wrote something down. The scratching of his pen sounded louder than it should have. Dr. Brooks looked at him, then back at Annie. And yet, your grades held. I studied at lunch, on the bus, sometimes in the laundry room because it was quieter than home. Evelyn did not move, but her face said she had heard that sentence from students before. Peter turned a page. You state here that funds saved for your deposit were taken by a family member. Do you have documentation? Annie's face warmed. No, sir. It was cash. That makes verification difficult. I know. Why was it kept in cash? Annie hesitated. She could feel the shame trying to rise. Then she remembered Evelyn's words. Tell the truth, without apologizing. Because sometimes my mom needed to borrow my card for groceries or gas, and I didn't want the school money mixed with household money. I kept it in a blue envelope behind my winter clothes. Peter's expression did not change. And your stepfather took it? Yes. With your mother's knowledge? Annie looked down. This was the part that hurt. I think she knew after. Maybe before. I'm not sure. Has a police report been filed? No. Why not? Annie lifted her eyes. Because I still have to live with what happens after people leave. The room went quiet. Dr. Brooks leaned forward. That is an answer many adults need to hear. Peter looked slightly uncomfortable, but not cruel. Miss Carter, emergency awards must be based on more than hardship. We need to know whether the student can remain enrolled. College will not be easy. Annie almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because easy had never been the offer. I know it won't be easy, she said. I'm not asking for easy. I'm asking for a chance to do the hard thing somewhere I can actually do it. Laura, sitting to the side, looked up from her notes. Annie continued, her voice steadier now. If I stay home, every emergency becomes mine. If the rent is short, I work. If Lily needs watching, I stay. If Raymond drinks, everybody moves around his mood. I love my family. But I can't become the plan for everybody else and still have a future. Dr. Brooks said softly, what do you want to become? A teacher, maybe a social worker. I'm not fully sure yet. I just know I want to be the adult who notices when a kid is trying to disappear in plain sight. Evelyn looked down at her hands. The interview lasted 35 minutes. Peter asked about budgets, transportation, work study. Dr. Brooks asked about support systems, academic goals, and Lily. Annie answered all of it. She did not cry. She did not beg. When she did not know something, she said so. When it ended, Laura walked Annie and Evelyn back into the reception area. William stood from the chair near the window. Well? He asked, then realized the question was unfair. Annie let out a breath. I didn't fall apart, Evelyn said. That is an understatement. Laura kept her tone formal. The panel will confer this afternoon. We may need additional documentation. Miss Carter, regardless of the final award decision, you handled yourself well. Thank you, Annie said. As they entered the elevator, Annie finally leaned back against the wall. Her eyes closed for 1 second. William said, proud of yourself? She opened her eyes. I don't know yet. That's fair. On the ride home, Annie sat quieter than before, the folder in her lap. Max greeted them at the door like she had returned from war and he had personally sent her. She crouched to pet him, and for the first time, she set her folder on the floor without keeping one hand on it. The moment did not last. Her phone rang. Mama, Annie answered in the hallway. Hey. William and Evelyn both stopped. Marlene's voice came through sharp with panic. This time William heard more than tone. Raymond had found out about the scholarship interview. Someone from the building had seen Annie get into William's car the night before, and Raymond was shouting that Annie was making the family look bad. Annie's face drained. Mama, where is Lily? A pause. Put her in the bedroom and close the door. Another pause. No, I'm not coming home right now. Not while he's like that. Evelyn moved closer but did not touch her. Annie listened, then whispered. Mama, why does keeping him calm always matter more than keeping me safe? The question hung there. Marlene must not have had an answer. Annie lowered the phone slowly after the call ended. He says if I don't come home and apologize, he'll come here. William's expression changed. Evelyn saw it and spoke first. Mr. Hartman, do not let anger make the next decision. He took a breath, then another. Annie looked at the front door as if Raymond might already be on the other side. William kept his voice even. If he comes, he does not come past the gate. Annie shook her head. You don't know him? No, William said. But I know this house, and tonight, you are safe inside it. Annie wanted to believe him. It was visible, painful, almost too much to watch. Max pressed against her leg. Outside, the afternoon darkened toward evening, and somewhere across the city, Raymond Cole was deciding that Annie's future had become an insult he could not tolerate. The first thing Evelyn did was lock the front door, not with panic, not with shaking hands. She turned the bolt, checked the side latch, then walked to the small console table near the hall and picked up the house phone. "Mrs. Moore," William said, "I have security." "Yes, sir, and I have common sense. We will use both." Annie stood in the hallway with her phone still in her hand. The screen had gone dark, but she kept looking at it as if Raymond's voice might climb out again. "He might not come," she said. Evelyn looked at her. "Hope is not a plan, Miss Carter." William took out his own phone and called the gatehouse. His voice stayed calm, almost too calm. "Thomas, if a man named Raymond Cole comes to the property, he is not to be admitted. Do not argue with him. Do not approach him alone. Call me, and call the police if he refuses to leave." Annie's head snapped up. "Police?" William ended the call before answering. "Only if necessary." "You don't understand what that can turn into. I understand enough to be careful." "No, you don't." Her voice rose, then she caught it and lowered it again. "For you, police are people who come when you call. For us, they come and everybody gets judged before anybody gets helped." Evelyn nodded once, slow. "She is right, Mr. Hartman." William looked between them. It would have been easier to defend himself. It would have been easier to say he knew good officers, had donated to community programs, had sat on civic boards and heard speeches about reform. But Annie was not speaking about speeches. She was speaking about what it felt like to stand in a hallway and wonder whether asking for help might make things worse. "All right," he said. "Then we call only if he becomes a threat. And if that happens, you decide what is said first." Annie seemed unsure what to do with that much control. "Me?" "Yes." Evelyn stepped closer. "You know the situation. Mr. Hartman knows the property. I know how to keep men from mistaking volume for authority. Between the three of us, we may manage." A small, frightened laugh escaped Annie before she could stop it. William said, "Would you like to call your mother back?" Annie looked down. "Not yet. Lily, she doesn't have her own phone." Annie pressed her thumb against the edge of the case. "Sometimes Mama lets her use hers. If Raymond is around, she won't." The hallway fell quiet. From the kitchen came the soft hum of the refrigerator, the ordinary sound of a house not yet touched by the trouble coming toward it. Evelyn pointed toward the sitting room. "No one waits in the hallway. Come sit down." Annie did not move. "If he comes here, I should go outside and talk to him." "No," William said too quickly. Annie flinched at the sharpness of it. He softened his voice. "No, not alone. He'll say I'm hiding behind rich people." Evelyn's eyes narrowed. A man who steals a girl's college money does not get to define courage. Annie looked at her, and for one moment her face almost broke. "He didn't take it from my hand. He took what was yours," Evelyn said. "Hands are not the only place people steal from." William watched Annie absorb that. He wondered how many times she had minimized the damage because naming it would require action no one in her house was ready to take. They moved to the sitting room. Annie sat on the edge of the couch, her backpack beside her. Max climbed up slowly next to her, ignoring William's rule about furniture, and rested his head on her knee. "Max," William said. "Leave him," Evelyn replied. Max did not open his eyes. Annie stroked the dog's ear with fingers that still shook. "He always this stubborn?" "He has been retired from obedience for several years," William said. That helped. Not much, but enough for Annie's breathing to slow. 20 minutes passed. Then 30. William's phone rang. "The gatehouse," he answered, already standing. "Yes?" Thomas's voice came through, controlled but tight. "Mr. Hartman, there is a man at the front gate. Says his name is Raymond Cole. He says he's here for his daughter." Annie stood so fast, Max slid off the couch. William looked at her. "He's at the gate." Her face went pale. Evelyn rose. "Speaker, please, sir." William put the phone on speaker. In the background, Raymond's voice cut through, loud and loose. "Tell that rich son of a gun to bring Annie out here. She ain't his to keep." Annie closed her eyes. Thomas said, "Sir, he appears to have been drinking." Raymond shouted again, "Annie, I know you in there. You think you fancy now? Got yourself a mansion and forgot your family? Evelyn stepped toward the phone. Thomas, this is Mrs. Moore. You will stay inside the gatehouse. Do not engage beyond repeating that he must leave the property. Yes, ma'am. William looked at Annie. Do you want to speak to him through the intercom? No. The answer came first as a whisper. Then she said it again. No. He wants a show. I'm not giving him one. Evelyn's mouth softened with approval. William spoke into the phone. Thomas, tell him Annie is safe and does not wish to speak. He must leave. Thomas repeated the message. There was a pause. Then Raymond laughed, ugly and loud. Safe? She was safe at home till he put ideas in her head. Annie, you hear me? Your mama's crying. Lily's asking where you are. You proud of that? Annie's hand went to her mouth. William's jaw tightened, but he stayed silent. Raymond kept going. You better come out here and stop embarrassing this family. College girl. You ain't better than us. Annie lowered her hand. Something changed in her face. Fear remained, but it no longer stood alone. She reached for William's phone. Can he hear me? William looked at Thomas's line. Through the intercom, yes. Evelyn asked. Are you certain? Annie nodded. William activated the connection. For a second, she said nothing. Then she held the phone with both hands. Raymond. The shouting stopped. Oh, now you got something to say? Annie's voice shook, but it did not disappear. I'm not coming out. You're coming home. No. You hear this? Raymond barked, maybe to Thomas, maybe to nobody. This is what happens when you let girls read too many books. They forget who feeds them. Annie's eyes filled, but she kept speaking. My mother feeds me. I feed Lily. You feed your anger, and call it being the man of the house. Evelyn stood very still. Raymond exploded. You watch your mouth. No, Annie said. And the word surprised even her. I have watched it long enough. William saw her shoulders tremble. He also saw her remain standing. You took my money, she said. Money I worked for. You laughed at my college letter. You make Mama afraid to breathe wrong. And now you're standing outside somebody else's house yelling about family. Raymond's voice dropped, which somehow made it worse. You come home, or I swear I'll make your mama pay for this. Annie's face changed at the threat. William reached toward the phone, but Annie held it away from him. If you scare her tonight, she said, that's on you, not me. Annie, I'm calling Mama after this. If she wants help leaving, I'll help her. If she won't leave yet, I'll still love her. But I'm not walking out there so you can feel big again. Raymond said something too slurred to follow. Annie's voice broke, but she finished. And I'm going to college if I have to crawl there. She ended the intercom. The room went silent. Then Annie sat down hard on the couch, as if her legs had just remembered fear. Evelyn came to her side. Breathe. Annie tried, failed once, then tried again. William picked up the phone. Thomas? He's leaving the gate, sir. Walking east. I'll watch until he turns the corner. Thank you. Call me if he comes back. He ended the call. Annie stared at the rug. I shouldn't have said all that. Evelyn sat beside her. You should have said it years ago, but today will do. Annie let out a sound halfway between a sob and a laugh. He's going to make it worse. Maybe, William said. But he was already making it worse. The difference is now people outside that apartment know. Her phone buzzed. Mama. Annie looked at it with dread. Answer only if you want, Evelyn said. Annie answered. Mama? Marlene was crying, but not loudly. Her voice was low, rushed. Raymond had called from the gate. He was furious. He was coming home. Lily was with Mrs. Alvarez downstairs. Marlene had packed a grocery bag with clothes but did not know what to do next. Annie stood. Mama, stay with Mrs. Alvarez. Don't go back upstairs. William was already reaching for his coat. Evelyn took the phone gently from Annie. Marlene, this is Evelyn Moore. Listen to me carefully. Take your identification, Lily's birth certificate if you can get it safely, any medication, and your phone charger. Do not argue with him. Do not wait for permission. Go to your neighbor and lock the door. Annie watched Evelyn, stunned. Yes, Evelyn said. We are coming. William looked at Annie. You don't have to go. Yes, I do. No, Evelyn said, handing the phone back. You have to decide. There is a difference. Annie looked at Max, at the phone, at the old sweatshirt she still wore. Then she lifted her chin. I'm going, she said. But I'm not going back to stay. William nodded. Then we go together. Evelyn reached for her purse. And we go properly. No rushing into foolishness. Mr. Hartman, call Thomas. Miss Carter, call Mrs. Alvarez back, and keep your mother on the line if you can. I will call the Women's Center on Halsted. They have an evening intake, if someone sensible answers the phone. William paused at the door and looked at Evelyn. She met his eyes. Yes, sir. I know people. For the first time that night, Annie looked at Evelyn with something close to wonder. Outside, the city had gone dark. The train station, the scholarship interview, the acceptance letter, all of it seemed to belong to another day. But Annie held her phone with a steadier hand now. She was still afraid, only now, fear had company. Thomas drove faster than usual, but never recklessly. That was one of the things William trusted about him. The city slid past the windows in dark blocks and yellow traffic lights, storefronts closing, buses sighing at corners, people hurrying home with paper bags held against their coats. Annie sat forward in the back seat, phone pressed to her ear, Grace's old sweatshirt bunched at her wrists. Mama, stay with Mrs. Alvarez, she said for the fourth time. Please, don't go upstairs for anything else. William sat beside her, not speaking. Evelyn sat in the front passenger seat, already on her own phone, her voice calm and firm. Yes, this is Evelyn Moore. I'm calling about an emergency intake for a mother and a 5-year-old girl. No, not tomorrow, tonight. The situation is escalating, and there is alcohol involved. She paused, listening. I understand your beds are limited. I also understand that limited is not the same as none. Please check again. Annie looked up at that, something like awe passing through her fear. William saw it too. Evelyn had been a schoolteacher for 30 years. She knew how to speak to offices that tried to hide behind exhaustion. Annie turned back to her phone. Where's Lily now? A small voice came through, distant and shaken. Annie? Annie's face changed at once. Hey, Bug, I'm here. William looked out the window, giving her what privacy he could in the back of a moving car. Are you coming? Lily asked. I'm coming, Annie said. But listen to me, okay? You stay with Mrs. Alvarez. You don't open the door for Raymond. Not even if he says he forgot something. You hear me? Is Mama crying? Annie closed her eyes. A little, but Mrs. Alvarez is with her, and I'm on my way. Did I do something bad? No. Annie's voice broke, but she held it together. No, baby. You didn't do one bad thing. Evelyn ended her call and turned slightly. They have space for one night at the Halsted Women's Center. After that, they'll assign a caseworker in the morning. Annie lowered the phone. Only one night? One night is a door, Evelyn said. In the morning, we find the next one. William nodded to Thomas. Halsted after we get them? Yes, sir. When they reached Annie's building, William understood more than he had from her words. The brick was tired, the front light flickering, the entry buzzer taped in 2 places. A plastic grocery bag had caught on the iron railing and snapped in the wind. It was not the worst building in Chicago. That was almost the point. It was ordinary enough for struggle to pass unnoticed. Annie was out of the car before William could remind her to wait. Evelyn followed quickly. Miss Carter, not alone. Annie stopped at the bottom step, breathing hard. William came beside her. We stay together. She nodded, then pressed the buzzer for 2B. Mrs. Alvarez opened the door before the second buzz finished. She was a short woman in her late 60s with silver hair pinned back and a cardigan pulled over her nightgown. She looked at Annie, then at William and Evelyn, and decided in 1 second who mattered. Your mama's in here, she said. Lily too. He came through yelling 10 minutes ago, went upstairs, then left again. I don't know if he'll be back. Thank you, Mrs. Alvarez, Annie said. Don't thank me. Get inside. The apartment smelled like coffee and laundry soap. Marlene sat on the edge of a floral couch, Lily pressed against her side, both of them wearing coats. A brown grocery bag sat at Marlene's feet. Her eyes were red, her hotel uniform still on under the coat. Annie crossed the room and dropped to her knees in front of Lily. The little girl threw her arms around Annie's neck. "I thought you weren't coming," Lily whispered. "I told you I was." Marlene looked past Annie at William. Her face held shame first, then fear. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean for it to get like this," Evelyn answered before William could. "Most women don't mean for storms to reach the house. The question now is whether you walk out before the roof comes down." Marlene looked at her, startled by the firmness. Annie stood slowly. "Mama, we have a place for tonight." Marlene tightened her arm around Lily. "A shelter? A women's center," Evelyn said. "Clean, staffed, secure. They are expecting you." Marlene's eyes filled. "I don't know if I can do that." Annie's face twisted. "Mama, I know," Marlene said quickly. "I know what he is. But if I leave, he'll say I took his child. He'll tell everybody I broke up the family." Mrs. Alvarez made a sound from the kitchen. "Family? That man breaks the peace every weekend and calls it living." Marlene looked down. William had handled negotiations worth hundreds of millions, and still he knew this was not his room to command. He spoke carefully. "Mrs. Carter, my name is William Hartman. I can arrange transportation. Mrs. Moore has contacted the center. No one is asking you to decide your whole life tonight. Just tonight." Marlene glanced at Annie. "And you?" Annie swallowed. "I'm not going back upstairs." The sentence hurt Marlene. William saw it. Annie saw it too. "I love you," Annie said, "but I can't keep going back just because he gets loud." Before Marlene could answer, footsteps pounded in the hallway outside. Mrs. Alvarez moved toward the door, but Evelyn raised one hand. "No." Raymond's voice came through the wood before he reached it. "Marlene, I know you in there. Open this door." Lily buried her face in Annie's sweatshirt. Marlene froze. William stepped toward the door, but Annie caught his sleeve. "Don't." He stopped. Raymond hit the door with his fist. "Annie, you proud now? Bringing strangers into family business?" Mrs. Alvarez shouted back. "Go home, Raymond. This is home." "No," Mrs. Alvarez said. "This is my apartment, and you are not invited." There was a pause. Then Raymond laughed. "Old lady, don't start with me." Evelyn moved to the door, not opening it. Her voice carried through clearly. "Mr. Cole, this is Evelyn Moore. Mrs. Carter and the child are leaving for the evening. You will step away from this door." "Who the hell are you?" A woman old enough to know that men who shout in hallways usually have nothing worth saying. Annie stared at her. Raymond cursed. His fist hit the door again, harder this time. William took out his phone. He looked at Annie. She was pale, but she nodded once. William called 911 and kept his voice controlled. He gave the address, the apartment number, the fact that a man was pounding on a neighbor's door, that a woman and child inside were trying to leave safely, that no one needed escalation, only removal and documentation. Raymond must have heard part of it because the pounding stopped. "You calling cops on me?" he shouted. Annie stepped toward the door before anyone could stop her. She did not open it. "You did this," she said, voice shaking but clear. "Not me." Silence followed. Then Raymond's footsteps retreated down the hall, uneven and angry. No one moved until the building door slammed below. Marlene began to cry, not loudly, just with her hand pressed to her mouth as if she could keep the years from spilling out. Annie knelt beside her. "Mama, please." Marlene looked at Lily, then at the grocery bag, then at the apartment door. Something in her seemed to give way. Not in defeat, but in surrender to the truth. "I need her birth certificate," she whispered. "Where?" Evelyn asked. "Top drawer." "In the bedroom." "Blue folder." Annie stood. "I'll get it." "No," Marlene said, rising on unsteady legs. "I will." That was the first brave thing Marlene did that night. Small to anyone else, immense to Annie. They moved quickly after that. Blue folder, medicine, phone charger, 2 shirts for Lily, Marlene's work shoes. Mrs. Alvarez packed muffins in a paper bag and pushed them into Annie's hands. "You eat these later," she said. "All of you." By the time they reached the curb, a patrol car had turned onto the block. William spoke to the officers outside, calm and brief. Evelyn stayed with Marlene and Lily. Annie held the blue folder against her chest, the same way she had held the college letter at the station. Thomas opened the car door. Marlene hesitated before getting in. "I don't know what tomorrow looks like," Evelyn placed a hand lightly on her shoulder. Most people don't. Get in anyway. Marlene did. Annie climbed in beside Lily. The little girl leaned against her, already half asleep from fear and relief. William took the front passenger seat this time, leaving the back to the family. As the car pulled away, Annie looked back at the building. One upstairs window glowed yellow. Somewhere inside was the room she had grown up in, the kitchen where the college letter had been laughed at, the hallway where Lily had learned to listen for footsteps. She did not feel free yet, but for the first time, leaving did not feel like betrayal. It felt like opening a door everyone had been too tired to touch. The Halstead Women's Center did not look like the kind of place Marlene had imagined. It sat between a closed dry cleaner and a small clinic with a blue awning, its brick front plain, its windows lit from inside. There was no sign shouting what it was, only a brass plate near the door with 3 words, Family Resource House. William noticed that and understood the mercy of it. Some doors needed to be found without announcing the pain of everyone who entered. Evelyn rang the bell. A camera above the frame shifted slightly. After a moment, the lock buzzed. A woman in a green sweater opened the door. She was around Marlene's age, with tired eyes and a badge clipped to her cardigan. Mrs. Moore? Yes, this is Marlene Carter, her daughter Lily, and Annie Carter. The woman stepped back. Come in. I'm Denise. We spoke on the phone. Marlene crossed the threshold like someone entering a courthouse. Lily clung to Annie's hand, half asleep, her small fingers sticky from one of Mrs. Alvarez's muffins. Annie carried the blue folder and the grocery bag. She would not let either out of her sight. Inside, the center smelled of coffee, disinfectant, and something warm from a slow cooker. A television murmured in a common room where 2 women sat with children in pajamas. A little boy drove a toy truck along the edge of a rug. Nobody stared for long. That was the first kindness of the place. Denise led them to a small office. We'll keep this brief tonight. Intake can wait until morning. I need names, immediate needs, medications, allergies, and whether anyone is expected to come looking for you. Marlene sat in the chair across from the desk. She looked smaller under the fluorescent light. My husband may. Does he know this address? No. Good. We do not release resident information. If he calls, he gets nothing. Denise looked at Annie. You're staying too? Annie opened her mouth, then closed it. She had not thought that far. William stood near the doorway, hands in his coat pockets, careful not to take up more room than necessary. Evelyn watched Annie, but did not answer for her. I don't know, Annie said. I have an interview thing tomorrow. For school. Denise nodded as if girls arrived every week carrying both family emergencies and college futures in the same tired hands. Then tonight you decide where you can sleep. Not where guilt tells you to sleep, where you can actually rest. Annie looked at Marlene. Marlene's eyes filled again. Baby, you don't have to stay here for me. Annie almost laughed, but it came out broken. I've been staying for you for years. The room went quiet. Marlene lowered her head. I know. It was the first time she had said those words without adding an excuse. Annie did not know what to do with them. Denise gave Lily a small stuffed rabbit from a basket near the wall. This is for tonight. You can leave it here in the morning or keep it if it helps. Lily took it and whispered, Thank you. Evelyn helped Marlene fill out the first form. William stepped into the hall and called Thomas, asking him to wait. He was not needed inside the office, and for once he knew not being needed was not an insult. When he returned, Annie was standing near a bulletin board, covered with flyers. Legal aid clinic on Thursdays, trauma counseling, child care vouchers, bus passes, job readiness workshop. She read each one like a person discovering that help existed but had been hidden behind the wrong doors. They should put these at the train station, she said. William stood beside her. Yes, and in laundromats, grocery stores, school bathrooms. Yes. She turned to him. People always say help is out there. But they don't say you need a map, a phone, a ride, and somebody who won't make you feel stupid for asking. William looked at the flyers. Then maybe the problem is not only that help is scarce, it is that help is badly placed. Annie studied him. You always talk like you're about to buy the building? Occupational defect. This time, her smile was faint but real. Denise found them a room on the second floor. 2 twin beds, one fold-out cot, a dresser with a chipped corner, clean sheets stacked on one mattress. Lily chose the bed by the wall and fell asleep before Marlene finished taking off her shoes. Marlene sat on the other bed, holding the blue folder in both hands. Annie stood near the cot. I can stay tonight. Marlene shook her head. No. You have that interview tomorrow. I already had one. Then whatever comes next. Marlene looked up. Her face was worn, but something in it had cleared. You should go back with Mrs. Moore and Mr. Hartman. Sleep there. Eat breakfast. Do what you need to do. Annie stared at her. Are you sure? No. Marlene gave a small, sad smile. But I'm saying it anyway. That was more than Annie expected, and not enough to erase the years before it. Both things were true. Evelyn appeared at the doorway. Miss Carter, we can return in the morning. Mrs. Carter and Lily are safe for tonight. Annie looked at Lily asleep with the rabbit tucked under her chin. Then she looked at her mother. Marlene reached for her hand. I'm sorry about the money. Annie's face tightened. I should have stopped him, Marlene said. Yes, Annie whispered. I didn't, and I can't make that smaller by crying over it. Annie swallowed hard. I needed you to choose me. Marlene nodded, tears sliding down now. I know. I was afraid that if I stood up to him, the whole house would fall apart. It was already falling. I know that now. Annie sat beside her mother. For a while they did not hug. They just held hands, which was harder in some ways because it did not pretend everything had been fixed. William waited downstairs with Max while Evelyn gave them time. The dog had not been allowed inside the sleeping area, so he sat in the lobby beside William's chair and sighed at every person who passed without petting him. Denise came over with a paper cup of coffee. You Mr. Hartman? Yes. I know your name from the station redevelopment. He braced himself. Do you? My cousin lost her cleaning job when one of the old contractors changed hands. She handed him the coffee. Not saying that's on you personally. Just saying buildings change hands faster than people recover from it. William accepted the cup. That may be on me more than I'd like to admit. Denise looked at him for a moment. That's not an answer I hear often. It's new for me. She nodded toward the stairs. That girl has a shot? Yes, William said. Then more honestly, she should. Should and does are different streets. I'm beginning to learn that. Annie came down 15 minutes later with Evelyn. Her eyes were red again, but her breathing was steady. Mama wants me to go back with you, she said. William stood. What do you want? Annie looked tired enough to sleep standing up. I want Lily safe. I want my mom to stay. I want tomorrow not to fall apart. She rubbed her forehead. And I want to stop wanting things that feel too expensive. Evelyn put an arm around her shoulders, light enough to refuse, firm enough to feel. Annie did not pull away. Then we begin with sleep, Evelyn said. The drive back was quieter than the first one. Annie leaned her head against the window. Chicago passed in dark storefronts and occasional pools of light. William watched her reflection in the glass. She no longer clutched the backpack, but the acceptance letter remained tucked inside Grace's sweatshirt, close to her heart. At the house, Evelyn sent her straight to the guest room after tea she barely finished. Max returned to his post outside her door without being told. William went to the study. On his desk lay the list of questions he had made for the scholarship board. He sat down but did not pick up the pen. His phone showed a message from Laura Bennett. Board requests follow-up meeting at 9:30 a.m. Concerns: housing stability, family interference, long-term support plan. William read it twice. The words were careful, official, and predictable. They were not wrong concerns. That was what made them dangerous. The board would not try to crush Annie's chance. They would simply weigh it until it became too heavy to lift. Evelyn appeared in the doorway. News? Follow-up meeting. They're concerned about stability. Of course they are. They'll ask whether she can stay enrolled with all of this happening. And what will you tell them, Mr. Hartman? He looked toward the hallway where Annie slept behind a closed door, Max guarding the threshold. I'll tell them the truth, he said. Stability is not something she lacks because she failed. It is something adults failed to give her. Evelyn nodded. That is a start. After she left, William opened a new page. At the top, he wrote, what support actually means. For the first time, he did not begin with money. He began with housing, transportation, meals, counseling, work that would not punish a class schedule, and one adult who would answer the phone when a form failed or a family emergency tried to drag a student back under. Near midnight, he stopped writing. Outside the study, the house was quiet. Not empty, quiet. There was a difference, and Annie Carter had brought it through his front door. At 7 the next morning, William found Annie in the kitchen before Evelyn. She stood at the counter with her acceptance letter, the scholarship checklist, and a blank sheet of paper lined up in front of her. Grace's sweatshirt hung loose on her shoulders. Her hair was pulled back, but a few strands had come free around her face. Max sat beside her chair, watching the toaster as if toast might finally become meat if he believed hard enough. "You're up early," William said. Annie looked over. "I didn't sleep much." "Neither did I." She glanced at the page in front of her. "Mrs. Moore said the board wants to talk again." "She told you?" She knocked before bed and said, "Do not borrow worry from tomorrow, but be dressed by 8:30. That sounded like a meeting. William smiled faintly. "That sounds like Evelyn." Annie tapped the blank page. "I was trying to make a list." "What kind of list?" "What I need, not what I want. What I actually need to stay in school if they say yes." William came closer but did not look over her shoulder until she turned the page toward him. The list was short and careful. Deposit. Dorm. Meal plan. Books. Winter coat. Laptop access. Work schedule that won't make me miss class. Bus money to see Lily. Someone to call if home gets bad. The last line had been written lighter than the others, as though she had almost decided not to include it. William read it twice. "This is a good list. It feels like too much. It is not too much. It is simply more than a tuition check." Annie studied him. "You wrote that down last night, didn't you?" He leaned one hip against the counter. "Something like it." Before she could answer, Evelyn entered in a robe and slippers, saw them both standing over paperwork, and stopped. "Good morning to everyone who has chosen paperwork before coffee, which is a decision I cannot support." Annie smiled. "Good morning, Mrs. Moore." Evelyn put a hand on Max's head as she passed. "And good morning to the only honest creature in the room." William said, "I'm offended on principle." "You will recover, sir." Breakfast was oatmeal, toast, sliced peaches, and coffee strong enough to make Annie blink after one sip. Evelyn replaced it with tea without comment. William noticed Annie ate more than she had the day before. Not much, but enough that the spoon did not sit unused between her fingers. At 8:40, Laura Bennett called. The follow-up meeting would happen by video. Dr. Brooks and Peter Wallace were available, along with one additional board member, a donor representative named Charles Whitcomb. William knew the name and did not like the way it arrived in the room. "He has strong opinions," William said after the call ended. Evelyn looked at him. "That is usually what people say when they mean a man has learned to be rude with polish." Annie set down her tea. "Should I be worried?" William chose honesty. "Be prepared. Not worried." They set up in the sitting room again. Annie sat at the small table with her documents. Evelyn sat off to the side, visible if Annie turned but outside the camera frame. William stood near the window at first, then Annie looked at him. "Can you sit?" she asked. "Of course. Not too close. Just where I know you're there." He took the armchair near the bookcase. The meeting began with Laura's face on the screen, then Dr. Brooks, Peter Wallace, and Charles Whitcomb. Charles looked to be in his late 60s, silver-haired, tanned, with the relaxed posture of a man used to being heard even when he had not earned the floor. "Miss Carter," Dr. Brooks said, "thank you for meeting with us again." "Thank you for giving me the time," Annie replied. Peter adjusted his glasses. "We reviewed your documents. Your academic record is strong. The concern is not merit. The concern is persistence under unstable circumstances." Annie nodded. "I understand." Charles leaned back. "I'll speak plainly. We see many young people with difficult family situations. Some are ready for college. Some are running from home and calling it ambition." Evelyn's eyes narrowed. Annie's face tightened, but she answered evenly, "I'm not running from home. I'm trying to build one I can stand in." Charles gave a small smile that did not reach his eyes. "That sounds nice, but college is expensive. The fund has a duty to invest wisely." William's fingers closed around the armrest. Dr. Brooks looked at Charles, then back at Annie. Miss Carter, tell us about last night, only as much as you are comfortable. We were told your mother and sister entered temporary housing. Annie took a breath. Yes, ma'am. My stepfather came to Mr. Hartman's gate angry. After that, my mother decided to leave the apartment for the night with my sister. Mrs. Moore helped us contact a women's center. They're safe right now, Charles said. And does this not prove my concern? Your family situation may repeatedly interrupt your schooling. Annie looked down at her hands. For a second, William thought she might fold. Then she lifted her head. My family situation has already interrupted my schooling, she said. I was late to class because I had to get my sister ready. I studied in laundry rooms. I saved money in cash because money at home disappeared. I still graduated. I still got accepted, so I don't think last night proves I can't continue. I think it proves I've been continuing without the support other students get to call normal. Dr. Brooks's face softened in a way she did not try to hide. Peter wrote something down. Charles was quiet for a moment, then said, If awarded, what prevents your stepfather from interfering again? Annie glanced toward William, not for an answer but for steadiness. I can't control what Raymond does, she said, but I can control where I live, who has access to me, and whether I keep giving up parts of my future to keep him calm. Campus housing would help. A work-study job would help. A counselor would help. Having someone at the fund who can answer when paperwork goes wrong would help. I'm not asking you to make my life perfect. I'm asking for the structure to keep one man's anger from deciding my whole future. The room on the screen went still. William felt Evelyn look at him. He understood. Annie had just explained support better than any policy document his foundation had ever produced. Laura spoke. Miss Carter submitted a support needs list this morning. I have it here. Charles looked down, likely at his copy. Winter coat? Annie's cheeks warmed. Lakeview gets cold. That almost broke the tension. Even Peter's mouth moved toward a smile. Dr. Brooks said, Practical. I like practical. Charles looked at the list again. Someone to call if home gets bad. Who would that be? Annie did not answer immediately. William sat forward. If I may, Laura said, briefly, Mr. Hartman. He looked at Annie first. Only with your permission. She nodded. William turned toward the screen. The fund can assign a student support coordinator. Not a donor. Not me alone. A staff member trained to handle emergency logistics, academic issues, housing concerns, and family interference. If that role does not exist, it should have existed years ago. Create it now and start with Miss Carter. Laura blinked, then began typing. Charles frowned. That would require budget approval. I approve the budget. That is not how governance works, William. No, William said. Governance is what kept us admiring student photographs, while missing the doors they could not open. Vote on it. Today, Evelyn's face remained calm, but there was approval in her stillness. Dr. Brooks leaned closer to her camera. I support creating the role as part of this award. Pending formal ratification. Miss Carter's case is not unique. It is simply the one in front of us. Peter nodded slowly. I agree, with documentation and measurable contact points. Charles sighed. You are all very moved. Dr. Brooks's expression sharpened. Experience is not sentiment, Mr. Whitcomb. Annie looked down quickly, hiding a small smile. The meeting lasted another 20 minutes. They discussed numbers, deposit, tuition gap, housing, meal plan, books, emergency stipend. Annie answered every question she could. When she did not know, she said, I can find out. William liked that more than any polished answer. Finally, Laura said, the board will vote now in closed session. Miss Carter, we will call within the hour. The screen went dark. Annie sat back as if the chair had been holding her upright. Evelyn stood. Tea. I can't drink anything, Annie said. Then hold the cup. William walked to the window. The street outside looked the same as it had the day before, but his life did not. He thought of Charles Whitcomb's phrase, invest wisely. For years, William had allowed men like that to define wisdom as caution with other people's futures. Behind him, Annie whispered, Did I mess it up? He turned. No. You sure? Yes. Evelyn handed Annie a mug. You told the truth and kept your spine. That is more than many adults manage before lunch. Annie held the tea with both hands. I wanted to yell at him. I know, Evelyn said. You did better. You made him listen. The call came 43 minutes later. Laura's voice was careful, but William heard the answer before she said it. Miss Carter, the emergency award has been approved. It will cover your enrollment deposit, first-year housing, meal plan, books, and the remaining tuition gap after federal and state aid. We are also assigning a support coordinator for weekly check-ins during your first semester. Work-study placement will be arranged on campus, not off-site. Annie stared at the phone. Laura continued. This is contingent on enrollment confirmation, completion of final paperwork, and maintaining academic standing. Doctor, Brooks also asked me to tell you she expects to see you on campus in the fall. Annie did not speak. Evelyn touched her wrist. Breathe, child. Annie took in air, then covered her mouth. Tears came, but they were different from the ones at the station. They did not fold her inward. They opened something. Thank you, she said, voice breaking. Thank you. After the call ended, no one moved for a moment. Then Annie stood and hugged Evelyn first. It was sudden, fierce, and over almost as quickly. Evelyn held her with both arms, eyes closed. When Annie turned to William, she stopped halfway, uncertain. He opened his arms only a little, giving her the choice. She stepped into the hug. It was not long. It did not need to be. Thank you, she whispered. William looked over her shoulder at the hallway, where Max had appeared with a sock in his mouth, entirely unaware that a future had just changed in the sitting room. You earned the door, William said. We just helped keep it from closing. Annie stepped back, wiping her face. I have to tell my mom. Call her, Evelyn said. Annie dialed with shaking fingers. Marlene answered on the second ring. Mama, Annie said, and then she laughed through the tears. I got it. I really got it. Whatever Marlene said made Annie sit down, crying harder now, nodding though her mother could not see it. William walked into the kitchen to give her privacy. He stood by the sink, hands on the counter, and let the moment settle. The scholarship had been approved. Annie had a way forward. But William knew enough now to understand that money had solved only the cleanest part of the problem. Raymond was still out there. Marlene was still frightened. Lily still needed safety. And Annie, even with a scholarship in hand, would still have to learn how to walk into a future without feeling guilty for surviving it. In the sitting room, Annie's laughter rose once, thin and unbelieving. William closed his eyes. For the first time in years, the sound of a young woman's future beginning did not make him turn away. Annie called Marlene twice more that afternoon. The first call was full of tears. The second was quieter, the way joy becomes careful once it remembers all the rooms it still has to walk through. Marlene was happy. Annie could hear it. But behind her mother's happiness was the low sound of a place that was not home yet. Women talking in the hall, a child crying somewhere. Denise's voice asking someone to sign a form at the front desk. Mama, it covers housing, Annie said again, as if saying it enough times would make it feel real. The dorm, food, books, the deposit. They're assigning someone from the fund to help if paperwork gets messed up. That's good, baby, Marlene said. That's real good. Annie sat at the kitchen table with the phone pressed to her ear. William had gone into the study to answer emails he had ignored for 2 days. Evelyn stood at the sink washing a pot that was already clean, giving Annie privacy without leaving her alone. Mama, Annie said, what did Denise say about tonight? She says Lily and me can stay another night while they talk to a caseworker. After that, maybe a short-term room if there's space. That's good. It's something. Annie heard the difference. Good was still too large a word for Marlene to trust. Did Raymond call? Marlene was quiet. Mama, he called Mrs. Alvarez's phone. She didn't answer. Then he left a message saying I was letting strangers turn my daughter against me. Annie shut her eyes. I'm not against you. I know. Do you? Another silence. This one hurt. Marlene's voice came back smaller. I'm trying to. Annie looked at the acceptance letter on the table. I need you to keep trying. I will. When the call ended, Annie kept the phone in her hand. Evelyn dried the pot and set it on the rack. She will not become brave all at once. I know, Knowing does not make it less disappointing. Annie gave a tired laugh. You ever get tired of being right? Frequently. No one appreciates the burden. That made Annie smile, but it faded when William entered the kitchen. He had loosened his tie, and there was a look on his face Annie had begun to recognize. It meant he had news that came dressed as logistics. What happened? She asked. Lakeview can hold your spot once the deposit posts. Housing will require you to complete the resident form by tomorrow afternoon. The support coordinator, Maya Ellis, will call you tonight. Annie blinked. Tonight? Yes. Laura says Maya is good. Good like helpful. Or good like she smiles while saying no. William considered that. Laura said persistent. I consider that better than helpful. Evelyn nodded. Helpful can be temporary. Persistent brings a sweater. Annie rubbed her forehead. There's so much. There is, William said. So we take it in order. He placed a folder on the table. Inside were printed forms, a campus map, a list of required items for dorm move-in, and a page titled First Semester Support Plan. Annie stared at that last one. You made a plan? A draft. You can cross out anything you don't like. She looked at him. People don't usually ask me that. They should. She pulled the page closer. It listed weekly check-ins, emergency transportation, campus counseling, work study limited to no more than 12 hours a week at first, a book stipend, winter clothing allowance, and permission for Annie to contact Maya directly if family issues threatened her enrollment. Annie read the winter clothing line twice. You all really put a coat in here. Chicago winters are not impressed by pride, Evelyn said. I have a coat. You have fabric with buttons. William sat across from Annie. There's something else. Annie's fingers still. I spoke with Denise at the center, not about your mother's private details, only about available resources. If Marlene chooses, they can help her apply for a longer-term family placement and job stability services. There may also be legal counseling if Raymond continues to harass her. Annie looked toward the window. She has to choose it. Yes. You can't just fix it? No. The answer was honest, and that made it both better and worse. Annie folded her arms on the table. I hate that. So do I. No, you hate not being able to solve something. I hate knowing my mom might walk back into it. William accepted the correction. You're right. Annie looked surprised. You always say that when you're wrong? I'm practicing. Evelyn set a cup of tea beside Annie. He is new at it, but improving. Max, hearing voices soften, wandered in with one of William's socks in his mouth. Annie pointed at him. Is that allowed? Absolutely not, William said. Max wagged his tail. He looks like he knows you won't do anything. He has a strong legal position. Annie laughed, and the sound carried into the hall. For a few seconds, the kitchen felt ordinary. Tea, papers, a disobedient dog, an old woman pretending not to smile, a man learning how not to dominate the room. Then Annie's phone buzzed again. Unknown number. She looked at William. Maya? He suggested. Annie answered. Hello? A woman's voice came through, brisk but warm. Hi, is this Annie Carter? This is Maya Ellis from the Hartman Education Fund. I hear we're about to keep a college from losing one of its better decisions. Annie blinked. I'm sorry? I mean, Lakeview accepted you. And now our job is to make sure paperwork doesn't trip you before you get there. Bad joke. I make them when forms annoy me. Annie looked at William, confused but less tense. Forms annoy me too. Then we'll get along. Do you have 20 minutes? Annie glanced at Evelyn, then William. Yes. Maya did not waste time. She walked Annie through the housing portal, explained what to put for emergency contact, and did not react strangely when Annie hesitated. You can list your mother if you want, Maya said. You can also list a secondary contact. Someone who will answer and not create more chaos. Annie looked at William. He shook his head slightly, not refusing, just making sure she knew it was her choice. Can I list Mrs. Moore? Annie asked. Evelyn looked up from the counter. Maya said, if Mrs. Moore agrees, absolutely. Evelyn's voice was steady. Mrs. Moore agrees. Annie entered the name carefully. When the call ended, the housing form was submitted. A confirmation screen glowed on the laptop. Annie sat back. I have a dorm, William said. You have a dorm. I have a meal plan. You have a meal plan. I have somebody named Maya who hates forms. That may be her finest qualification. Annie looked at the screen, then covered her mouth, not to hide tears this time, but to hold back the sighs of the moment. Evelyn touched her shoulder. Let it be good, child. You do not have to make room for the bad every minute. Annie nodded, but her phone buzzed before she could answer. This time, it was a text from Marlene. Raymond came by the building. Mrs. Alvarez didn't open. Denise says I should stay here tonight. I'm scared, Annie. But I'm staying. Annie read it twice. Then she placed the phone on the table, slowly, like setting down something fragile. She's staying, Annie said. Evelyn closed her eyes for half a second. Good. William did not speak. He had learned that some victories were too delicate for applause. That evening, Evelyn made meatloaf, mashed potatoes, green beans, and cornbread because, as she put it, no one should enter higher education on soup alone. Annie ate at the kitchen table, not the edge of the chair this time, but seated fully, her back touching the wood. After dinner, William found her in the hallway looking at the framed photograph of Grace. The college letter photo. She was beautiful, Annie said. Yes. She got accepted too? William stood beside her. Yes. She was going to study architecture. She said buildings should make people feel less lonely. Annie looked at the photo. Sounds like she noticed things. She did. I'm not her, Annie said softly. I know. I just need to say it. I know that too. William's voice held no offense, only grief, and something cleaner than grief. Annie looked down at Grace's sweatshirt. I can give this back. Not yet, he said. Wear it until you have something warmer. Chicago winters aren't impressed by pride. He smiled. I've heard that. For a while they stood without speaking. Then Annie said, Mr. Hartman? Yes? Thank you for not making me feel like I have to become somebody else to deserve help. William looked at Grace's photograph, then at the girl beside him who was not his daughter and did not need to be. Thank you for reminding me. Help can do harm if it forgets to respect the person receiving it. Annie nodded, accepting that as honestly as it was offered. That night, when she went to the guest room, Max followed again. Annie paused at the door. You coming in or guarding from outside? Max stepped into the room without waiting for permission. William, watching from the hall, said, He has made his decision. Annie looked back, and for the first time since he had found her at the station, her smile stayed. I guess he has. She closed the door halfway, not locked this time, not wide open either. Halfway was enough for one night. Morning came with rain tapping against the kitchen windows. Not a hard storm, just a steady Chicago rain that made the sidewalk shine and turned every passing car into a soft hiss. Annie stood at the counter with a mug of tea between both hands, watching drops chase one another down the glass. She had slept more than she expected, though not enough to feel rested. Max had taken over the rug beside her bed sometime after midnight and snored like a man with no unpaid bills. Evelyn was making pancakes because, in her words, a girl with a dorm assignment deserves more than toast. William sat at the table reading an email from Laura Bennett, his expression tightening one line at a time. Annie noticed. What happened? William looked up. Nothing final. That means something. Evelyn turned from the stove. Mr. Hartman, do not wrap bad news in tissue paper. It still has corners. He set the phone down. Charles Whitcomb has requested an in-person board review before funds are released. Annie's fingers tightened around the mug. I thought they approved it. They did. He is questioning the long-term support plan and the speed of the decision. Can he stop it? Not alone, but he can slow it down. William did not answer fast enough. Annie looked toward the window again. The deposit deadline is tomorrow. I know. Evelyn slid a pancake onto a plate with more force than necessary. That man did not become concerned overnight. He became uncomfortable when the right thing moved faster than his permission. William stood. I'll handle Charles. No, Annie said. Both adults looked at her. She put the mug down. If this is about me, I should be there. William shook his head slightly. You do not have to put yourself through another room like that. I know I don't have to. Her voice stayed quiet, but there was iron under it now. But I'm tired of people talking about whether my life is stable enough while I'm not in the room. Evelyn watched her for a moment, then nodded. Then we eat first. Annie almost argued, but Evelyn pointed at the chair. Courage burns calories. By 10:30, they were back at the Hartman Education Fund office. Annie wore the same simple cardigan Evelyn had pressed for her interview, Grace's sweatshirt folded carefully in her bag. She had wanted to wear it, then decided she needed to enter the room as herself. William had said nothing, but Evelyn caught his eye and gave a small approving nod. Laura met them near reception, concern tucked behind professionalism. "I'm sorry about this," Annie said. "It's not your fault." "No," Laura replied. "But it is our room. That makes it our responsibility." Dr. Brooks was already seated when they entered. Peter Wallace sat beside her, documents arranged in front of him. Charles Whitcomb stood near the window, looking down at the street as if the city were a report he had not yet approved. "Miss Carter," Dr. Brooks said warmly. "Thank you for coming." Charles turned. "I was under the impression this would be a board discussion." Annie sat before anyone could tell her where. "I was under the impression my future was part of it." Evelyn sat behind her. William remained standing near the wall until Laura gestured to a chair. Charles gave a polite smile. "No one is denying your effort, young lady." Annie folded her hands on the table. "Then what are you denying?" Peter coughed once and looked at his notes. Charles sat. "We are ensuring that charitable funds are used responsibly." William's voice was calm. "Annie has met the criteria. She has met emergency criteria under unusual influence." William's eyes narrowed. "Say what you mean." Charles glanced at Annie, then back at William. "You found a distressed young woman, brought her into your home, and within 48 hours the fund bearing your family name approved a full emergency award. We must consider appearance." Annie felt heat rise in her face, but she did not look away. Dr. Brooks leaned forward. "Appearance to whom, Mr. Whitcomb?" "To donors, to partner institutions, to families who may wonder why their children were not given the same consideration." Annie spoke before William could. "Maybe they should wonder." The room went still. She swallowed once, then continued. "Maybe they should wonder why students have to be lucky enough to cry in front of the right person before anybody sees what they need." Laura's pen stopped moving. Annie looked at Charles. "I don't know rich people. I didn't know Mr. Hartman owned anything when he walked up. I didn't ask to sleep in his house. I asked every place around that station for work first. I asked the normal way. Nobody hired me. I called the school. The form didn't work on my phone. The portal told me I owed money I didn't have. So if this looks unusual, maybe it's because the usual way wasn't built for girls like me." Charles's mouth tightened. "That is a compelling statement, but emotion cannot replace structure." "I agree," Annie said. That surprised him. She opened her folder and slid her support needs list across the table. "That's why I need structure. Housing, food, work study that doesn't break my class schedule, a person who answers when a form fails, a safe emergency contact. I'm not asking the fund to feel sorry for me. I'm asking it to do what it says it does." Dr. Brooks looked at the list again, though she had already read it. "Clear and practical." Peter adjusted his glasses. "Miss Carter, if your mother returns to the home, what will you do?" The question hurt, but Annie had known it was coming. "I will love her," she said, "but I won't give up school to make her decision feel less painful." Evelyn closed her eyes briefly. Peter's expression softened. "And your sister?" "I'll stay in her life. I'll visit when it's safe. I'll call. I'll help my mother find resources when she's willing to use them. But I can't become Lily's only plan either." Annie's voice wavered. "She deserves more than that." "So do I." William looked down at his hands. In every boardroom he had ever entered, people respected numbers, projections, leverage. Annie had none of that. She had the truth, carefully held, and it was making the room smaller around everyone who wanted to hide behind procedure. Charles said, "You speak well, but the concern remains that Mr. Hartman's personal involvement compromises objectivity." William finally answered, "Then remove me from the award process completely. Put the decision in writing with the criteria attached. Have Laura and Dr. Brooks oversee disbursement. Assign Maya as coordinator. I won't touch the funds." Charles looked annoyed. "That does not address reputational risk." "Whose reputation?" Evelyn asked. Charles looked toward her as if he had forgotten she was there. She sat straight, purse in her lap, voice respectful enough to cut. "The fund's reputation, Or the comfort of men who prefer charity to stay quiet and photogenic? Laura looked down quickly. Charles flushed. Mrs. Moore, I don't think— No, sir, Evelyn said. I imagine you don't. Not often enough about students who lack polished parents and clean paperwork. Dr. Brooks covered the smallest smile with her hand. William said, Charles, this fund was created in my daughter's memory. For years, I let it operate at a distance because distance was easier. That was my failure. Annie Carter did not create a reputational risk. She revealed a moral one. The room quieted. Annie looked at him then, not as a savior, not as Grace's father, as a man finally telling the truth in the right room. Peter cleared his throat. I recommend the award stand, with governance notes added, Mr. Hartman recuses himself from individual award decisions involving Miss Carter. Emergency support protocols are documented, and the student coordinator role is reviewed after 1 semester. Dr. Brooks said, I second that. Laura looked at Charles. Mr. Whitcomb? He sat back, jaw working. I'll abstain. Noted, Laura said. Annie did not understand board procedure, but she understood the air changing. Dr. Brooks turned to her. Miss Carter, your award stands. For a moment, Annie only stared. Then she nodded once, because if she spoke too quickly, she would cry. Thank you. Dr. Brooks's voice softened. Do not thank us by becoming perfect. Thank us by staying when it gets hard and asking for help before the floor disappears. Annie breathed out, a shaky sound. I can try. That is what most of us are doing, Dr. Brooks said. Outside the conference room, Laura handed Annie an updated folder. Maya will call you at 4. Lakeview will receive deposit confirmation today. Today? Annie asked. Today. The word felt almost too large. In the elevator, Annie leaned back against the wall. Evelyn stood beside her. William across from her. Annie looked at both of them. I didn't fall apart. No, William said. You made a room full of adults do their job. Evelyn nodded. A useful public service. Annie laughed, then covered her face as tears came anyway. Not desperate tears. Not station step tears. These were the kind that arrived when a person had been braced for a door to close and heard, instead, the lock turn. When they stepped out into the lobby, the rain had slowed. Through the glass doors, the street shone under a thin gray light. Annie stopped before they went outside. What now? William asked. She looked at the folder in her hands. Now I tell my mother I'm really going. Her voice trembled, but she did not sound like she was asking permission. She sounded like someone learning the weight of her own decision. Marlene did not answer the first call. Annie stood just outside the Hartman Education Fund building, one hand around the updated folder, the other holding her phone. The rain had stopped, but water still slipped from the edges of awnings and gathered along the curb. William waited a few steps away with Max, giving her room. Evelyn stood closer, not crowding, just near enough that Annie could feel she was not alone. Annie called again. This time Marlene picked up on the 5th ring. Babu? Annie closed her eyes for a second. Her mother sounded tired, not just from one bad night, but from years of mornings that started before dawn and ended with someone else needing more than she had left. Mama, Annie said, the award is final. The deposit goes through today. I have housing. I'm going. There was silence. Not rejection, not joy, something in between, heavy with all the things Marlene had not yet learned how to say. Then Marlene whispered, You're really going to college? Yes. Annie waited for the old fear to come through the line. Wait 1 year. Help us get steady. Don't make him mad. Instead, Marlene let out a shaky breath. Good, she said. Good, baby. Annie's eyes filled. Are you sure? No. Marlene gave a small, broken laugh. But I'm saying it anyway. Maybe that counts for something. It counts. Denise says there's a caseworker coming this afternoon. She says if I stay, they can help me file for longer placement. Maybe job help too. Lily ate cereal and 2 bananas this morning like she never saw food before. That made Annie laugh through the tears. She always does that when she's nervous. I know. Marlene's voice softened. She asked if your school has a playground. I'll tell her it has a whole campus. She'll like that. Annie looked toward the street. Mama, Raymond called? Marlene's silence answered before she did. He left messages, Marlene said. I didn't call back. That's good. He said I embarrassed him. Said you embarrassed him. Said everybody in the building knows our business now. Annie's throat tightened. He embarrassed himself. I know. Marlene paused. I think I know. Evelyn watched Annie's face, reading what the phone would not let her hear. Mama, Annie said, promise me you won't leave the center today. I promise. Even if he says he's sorry. Bobby. Mama. Another pause. Then Marlene said, I promise I won't leave today. Today was not forever. But Annie had learned the night before that sometimes one night was a door. Maybe one day could be one too. After the call ended, Annie held the phone against her chest. William approached slowly. How is she? She's staying today. Evelyn nodded. Today is a respectable beginning. They drove back to William's house without much talking. Annie sat by the window, watching the city brighten after rain. Everything looked ordinary again. Delivery trucks, crossing guards, people shaking umbrellas, a man in a Cubs cap arguing with a parking meter. It bothered her a little that the world could look normal while her life was rearranging itself piece by piece. At the house, Maya Ellis called exactly at 4. Annie answered from the kitchen table with Evelyn beside her and William in the study. Close enough to help if asked, far enough not to hover. Annie Carter, Maya said. I have good news and several annoying tasks. Which do you want first? Good news. Wise. Lakeview confirmed your deposit. Housing assigned you a room in Maple Hall. 2-person room. 2nd floor. Shared bathroom down the hall. Your roommate's name is Paige Donnelly. I'll email you her school address after this. Annie wrote it down. Maple Hall. Paige Donnelly. And the annoying tasks? Immunization form, housing agreement, student ID photo, meal plan confirmation, and direct deposit setup if you take work study. Annie lowered her forehead to the table. Of course, Maya laughed. College is 90% forms pretending to be a dream. We'll do them one at a time. They worked for nearly an hour. Annie found vaccination records by calling her high school nurse's office. Evelyn helped scan the ID Annie had in her wallet. William came in once to ask if anyone needed anything, and was sent away by Evelyn because watching paperwork does not make it go faster, sir. After the forms were done, Annie sat back and looked at the confirmation emails lined up on the laptop. Maple Hall. Meal plan active. Student account pending final aid disbursement. Orientation schedule. Attached. It was becoming real in ways that frightened her. That evening, William drove Annie and Evelyn to the Women's Center. He did not come upstairs until Marlene asked for him. That mattered to Annie. He was learning when not to enter a room. Lily ran down the hallway when she saw Annie and nearly knocked into her knees. Annie, Mama says you got a college house. A dorm, Annie said, hugging her. But yes, kind of like a college house. Can I sleep there? Not unless you plan on doing homework. Lily made a face. No. Marlene stood in the doorway of the small room, arms folded around herself. She had changed into a clean t-shirt from the center's donation closet. Without the hotel uniform, she looked less like someone always on her way to serve others, and more like a woman who had misplaced herself for a long time. Annie handed her a folder. Maya printed a resource list. For you. Housing, counseling, legal clinic, job placement. You don't have to do all of it today. Marlene accepted it with both hands. Thank you. Evelyn sat with Lily on the floor and let her show off the stuffed rabbit Denise had given her. William remained near the window, speaking quietly with Denise about transportation vouchers and whether the center needed anything immediate. Denise told him they needed bus passes more than speeches. William wrote it down. Annie and Marlene sat side by side on the bed. I'm sorry, Marlene said. Annie looked at the floor. You said that. I need to say it more than once. I don't know if that fixes anything. It doesn't. Marlene twisted the edge of the folder. I kept thinking if I could just get through one more week, one more bill, one more bad night, then maybe things would settle. I didn't notice you were the one paying for my waiting. Annie swallowed. Marlene continued, voice shaking. When you were little, I used to tell myself I'd never let anybody make you feel small. Then I got tired and scared. And I started asking you to understand things I should have protected you from. Annie wanted to forgive her all at once. She also wanted to be angry for a long time. The two feelings sat together, neither making room for the other. I love you, Annie said. I know, but I'm still hurt. Marlene nodded. I know that too. Lily climbed onto the bed between them, ending the conversation the way children often did, by needing warmth more than closure. Annie wrapped an arm around her sister and looked over Lily's head at her mother. I'm going to school, Annie said. Marlene's eyes filled. I know. I need you not to make me feel guilty for it. Marlene pressed her lips together. I'll try. No, Mama, I need more than try. For a moment, the old Marlene appeared. The one who would have looked away, sighed, said Annie did not understand. But then she glanced at Lily, at the folder in her lap, at the center room with its plain walls and clean sheets. I won't, she said. I won't make you carry what belongs to me. Annie believed she meant it. Whether she could live it was another question, but meaning it was more than they had yesterday. When they left the center, Lily insisted on walking them to the lobby. She hugged Max first, then Annie, then Evelyn. She looked at William and hesitated. Are you the man with the college house? She asked. William crouched slightly so he did not tower over her. I suppose I know some people who help with college houses. Lily considered that. Can Annie have snacks there? Yes, he said. We'll make sure of it. Good. She gets cranky. Annie gasped. Lily. Lily grinned and ran back to Marlene. On the drive home, Annie was quiet. William did not ask why. Some quiet was not empty. Some quiet was a person setting down one weight and discovering another underneath. At the house, Evelyn went to make tea. Max followed her, loyal to anyone near food. Annie lingered in the hallway by Grace's photograph. William stopped beside her. My mom said she won't make me feel guilty, Annie said. That is good. She meant it. But you're not sure she can do it. Annie looked at him. How did you know? People can mean a thing before they know how to practice it. She nodded slowly. William looked at Grace's picture. I promised my daughter I would go to her college orientation. She made me say it twice because she knew I sometimes let work swallow promises. I meant it. I never got the chance to practice it. Annie turned toward him. I'm sorry. Soigny. He had said those words before, to many people, in many proper settings. They had never sounded useful. Tonight, they sounded plain enough to be true. Annie touched the edge of Grace's sweatshirt. Do you want to come to mine? The question landed so gently that William almost missed how much courage it took. He looked at her, not his daughter, not a replacement, a young woman offering him a seat at a door she had earned. If you still want me there when the day comes, he said. I would be honored. Annie nodded once, then looked back at the photograph. I might be scared, she said. You probably will be. That's not comforting. No, William said, but it's honest. She let out a tired laugh. Evelyn called from the kitchen. Tea is ready, and if either of you plans to stand in that hallway discussing life all night, take a sweater. Annie smiled. For the first time, when she walked toward the kitchen, she did not look like a guest afraid of touching the wrong thing. She looked like someone who had not arrived completely, but had been invited to stay long enough to breathe. The week before move-in, Annie learned that a future could arrive in boxes. Not grand boxes, not matching ones, not the kind people in catalogs stacked beside dorm beds with smiling parents nearby. Hers came from places that knew how to stretch $1. A laundry basket from Target. Towels from a church donation closet. Evelyn trusted. Sheets still in their plastic wrap from Mrs. Alvarez. Notebooks bought on sale. A desk lamp William insisted was practical and Annie insisted looked too expensive. It has 3 brightness settings, William said, standing in the kitchen with the lamp box in his hands. I'm going to college, not performing surgery. Reading requires light. So does showing off. Evelyn passed behind them with a stack of folded washcloths. Let the man buy the lamp, Miss Carter. He is trying to be useful in a category where damage is limited. William looked at her. Thank you, Evelyn. That was not praise, sir. Annie laughed and wrote lamp on her packing list. The list had become serious business. Maya had emailed one, Lakeview had posted one, Evelyn had made a better one in neat handwriting, and Annie had made her own version because she trusted no list until she had rewritten it. Clothes, shower shoes, detergent, phone charger, Documents, letter. The last item meant the acceptance letter. She knew she did not need to bring it, but leaving it behind felt wrong. It had survived the station steps. It deserved to see the dorm. Marlene and Lily came over 2 days before move-in. William sent Thomas to pick them up from the Women's Center, where Marlene had been granted another week, while a caseworker helped her apply for longer transitional housing. Raymond had called several times from blocked numbers, but Marlene had not gone back. She had started saying the sentence like a fact. She was testing for strength. I have not gone back. Lily ran into the kitchen first, carrying the stuffed rabbit from the center and wearing sneakers with pink laces donated by a woman who had never met her. Annie, Mama says you're packing for your college house. Dorm, Annie said, pulling her into a hug. I told her that, Marlene said from the doorway. She looked tired, but different. Her shoulders were not as high. Her eyes still carried fear, but they were no longer asking the room for permission to exist. Evelyn greeted her with coffee. Mrs. Carter, Marlene, please. Then Evelyn. That exchange, small as it was, made Annie look up. Her mother had not lowered her eyes when she said her own name. They packed in the guest room. Lily folded socks badly and was praised for effort. Marlene sat on the bed with Annie's clothes in her lap, smoothing each shirt before placing it in the suitcase. For a while, neither of them spoke about anything important. They talked about whether Annie needed 2 hoodies or 3, whether dorm bathrooms were cold, whether cafeteria food was worse than high school lunch. Then Marlene picked up Grace's sweatshirt. Annie's hand moved toward it. That one stays with me. Marlene looked at the worn fabric. Mrs. Moore told me whose it was. Annie nodded. Marlene folded it carefully. Then you take good care of it. I will. Marlene placed it on top of the suitcase and kept her hand there a moment. I should have been the one giving you something like this. Annie sat beside her. Mama, no, let me say it. Marlene looked at the open suitcase. A mother is supposed to send her daughter off with more than apologies and borrowed things. Annie felt the old ache rise, but it did not swallow her. You're here. I almost wasn't, but you are. Marlene nodded slowly. I'm trying to learn how to be here before it's too late. Lily came in holding a pair of shower shoes. Why do you need shoes for the shower? Is the shower mean? Annie laughed, grateful for the interruption. College showers are public. You don't trust public floors. Lily looked horrified. I'm never going to college. We'll discuss that later, Marlene said, and for the first time Annie heard a future in her mother's voice that reached beyond next week's rent. Move-in morning came bright and cool. William's car waited at the curb, but Annie insisted on carrying her own backpack. Evelyn carried a bag of food because she did not trust campus snacks as a concept. William carried the lamp and 1 box of books. Max was not invited, officially. But he rode along anyway, settled beside Annie as if he were part of the admissions package. Lakeview State appeared after 90 minutes of highway in small towns, its brick buildings set behind wide lawns beginning to turn gold at the edges. Students and parents crowded the sidewalks. Minivans stood open. Fathers wrestled with futon frames. Mothers held clipboards. Younger siblings complained. Volunteers in school t-shirts pointed toward residence halls with the weary cheer of people who had already answered the same question 80 times. Annie went quiet. William noticed her fingers tighten around the acceptance letter inside her folder. Still want to do this? He asked. She looked at the campus. Yes. Scared? Very. Good, he said. She turned toward him. You keep saying that like fear is a certificate. No, but it means you understand the size of what you're doing. Evelyn from the front seat said, it also means you have sense. Fools are rarely nervous enough. Maple Hall smelled of floor cleaner, cardboard, and new beginnings trying not to panic. Annie's room was on the 2nd floor. Her roommate had not arrived yet. 1 bed sat by the window, 1 near the closet. Annie stood in the doorway, taking in the cinder-block walls, 2 desks, 2 dressers, 1 narrow closet, 1 window looking over a maple tree. It's small, Lily said. Annie looked around. It's mine. Marlene's eyes filled at that. They made the bed first. Evelyn directed. William obeyed poorly. Lily placed the stuffed rabbit on the pillow, then took it back when she remembered it was hers. Everyone pretended not to notice Annie wiping her eyes while hanging her few clothes in the closet. Marlene put the acceptance letter in the top desk drawer, then looked at Annie. Here? Annie nodded. Here. William assembled the lamp without reading the instructions and had to be corrected by Evelyn twice. You build train terminals, Annie said, watching him struggle with the base. I hire people who build train terminals. That explains it. Marlene laughed softly from the bed. The sound surprised them all, including her. When everything was put away, the room still looked half empty compared to others down the hall. No matching comforter set, no framed vacation photos, no plastic bins labeled by season. But there were sheets, books, a lamp, a winter coat in the closet, a small bag of food from Evelyn, and a folded sweatshirt with another girl's history in its seams. It was enough to begin. Outside the residence hall, families were starting to leave. Some mothers cried openly. Some fathers pretended to check tire pressure so they could turn away. Annie hugged Lily first. You call me, Lily said. I will. Every day? Almost every day. That means not every day. That means I have classes. Lily sighed, offended by education already. Marlene stepped forward next. For a second, she looked like she might say too much or nothing at all. Then she pulled Annie close. I am proud of you, Marlene whispered. Annie held her tighter. I needed to hear that. I know. I'm sorry it took so long. When they separated, Marlene did not ask her to come home soon. She did not mention Raymond. She did not hand Annie guilt wrapped as concern. She simply touched her daughter's cheek and said, Go learn something big enough for both of us. Annie nodded, crying now without shame. Evelyn hugged her next, firm and warm. Eat breakfast. Wash your towels. Do not wait until you are falling apart to call someone. Yes, ma'am. And if any professor acts like confusion is a moral failure, you tell me his name. Annie laughed. Yes, ma'am. William stood last, hands in his coat pockets. For all his money, all his buildings, all his practiced control, he looked suddenly unsure. Annie stepped toward him. You came. You asked. People don't always come just because they're asked. No, he said. They don't. She hugged him. He held still for half a second, then hugged her back carefully, as if honoring a boundary even inside tenderness. You earned this, he said. I know, Annie whispered. I'm trying to know it louder. He smiled, but his eyes were wet. That may take time. I've got a semester. You've got more than that. She stepped back. Max, waiting by the car, gave one bark as if annoyed he had not received a proper farewell. Annie crouched and kissed the top of his head. You take care of him, she whispered. William heard and said, He believes it is the other way around. It is. They left her at the edge of the walkway because Annie asked them to. She did not want to be escorted all the way back inside like someone fragile. She stood with her backpack over one shoulder and watched the car pull away. Then she turned toward Maple Hall. Every step felt strange. Too light, then too heavy. She thought of the station steps, the cold, the coffee offered by a stranger, the old dog refusing to move, the word congratulations trembling in her hands. She thought of Raymond laughing in the living room. She thought of Marlene saying, Go learn something big enough for both of us. At the entrance, Annie paused. A white girl with 2 laundry baskets nearly bumped into her. Sorry, are you moving in too? Annie looked at the open door, the hallway noise, the campus beyond. Yeah, she said. The girl shifted one basket against her hip. I'm Paige. Maple 214. Annie blinked. Annie. Same room. Paige smiled, relieved. Oh, thank God. My mom packed enough towels for a hotel. Please tell me you're normal. Annie thought about the last week and almost laughed. I'm working on it. They walked in together. Behind her, the door did not close like a warning. It opened like the first page of something she had fought to read. The first semester did not turn Annie into someone new. It made her busy. That was different. She learned which washing machine on the second floor ate quarters. She learned that Paige talked in her sleep before exams and apologized for it every morning. She learned that the dining hall eggs were safest on Tuesdays, that the library basement stayed open later than the website claimed, and that asking a professor for help before failing an assignment felt humiliating only the first time. Maya called every Friday at 4. The first call lasted 20 minutes. The second lasted 12. By October, Annie sometimes answered while walking across campus with a backpack full of books and a half-eaten granola bar in her hand. You still alive? Maya asked one Friday. Barely. My education professor assigned 3 chapters and then said, "This one is light. That is professor language for suffering." I figured. Any trouble from home? Annie slowed near the library steps. The trees along the quad had gone red and gold. Students moved past in sweatshirts, laughing, complaining, making weekend plans that did not involve checking whether a little sister was safe. "Mama's still at the center," Annie said. "They're moving her and Lily into transitional housing next week." "That's good." "It is." Annie adjusted the phone. Raymond keeps calling from new numbers. She doesn't answer most of them. "Most?" She answered once. Then she called Denise instead of going back. "That counts." "I know. Do you know, or are you saying it because I said it?" Annie looked across the quad. "Both." Maya laughed. "Acceptable." Marlene did not become brave in a straight line. Some days she spoke like a woman rebuilding her life. Other days her voice went quiet when Raymond left a message. But she stayed. She found steady kitchen work through the center and started a budgeting class she complained about every Tuesday. Lily began kindergarten near the transitional apartment and sent Annie drawings of Max, though Max appeared purple in most of them. William kept his promise about orientation, then tried not to overstep after that. At first, he texted too formally. "Do you require anything this week?" Annie showed Paige, who read it aloud in a deep voice and said, "Does he think you're a small corporation?" Annie wrote back, "I'm fine. You can just ask how school is." The next message came 2 days later. "How is school?" She laughed so hard Paige asked if she was okay. Evelyn mailed care packages with practical items and no nonsense. Cough drops, laundry pods, black pens, cocoa packets, a sewing kit, and once, a note that said, "Eat vegetables even when no one is watching." William added gift cards and pretended they were from Max. Annie pretended to believe him. In November, Annie came home for a weekend. Not to the old apartment. To William's house first, then to Marlene's transitional unit on Sunday. She stood in the kitchen where she had filled out forms months earlier and realized she was no longer afraid to open the refrigerator. Evelyn noticed. "You found the orange juice without asking." Annie looked at the carton in her hand. "I did. A milestone. Do I get a certificate?" "You get breakfast." William entered with the newspaper under one arm. Max limped behind him, older but still convinced he was necessary to every room. "Annie," William said, then stopped. He had almost asked if she required anything. She saw it happen. "How is school?" he corrected. She smiled. "Hard." "Good?" "Also hard." "That seems honest." At breakfast, she told them about Paige, about her first B-, about the little boy she tutored through a campus volunteer program, who pretended not to like reading but always showed up early. William listened without checking his phone once. Later, Annie found him in the hallway by Grace's photograph. The picture had not moved. Grace still stood there with her college letter, laughing at a future that never arrived. "I got through midterms," Annie said. William looked at her. "Grace would have liked you." Annie took that in gently. "I think I would have liked her too." He nodded. "She's not the reason you helped me," Annie said. "No," he answered. "But she may be the reason I was still able to recognize what helping meant." That felt true enough to leave alone. By spring, the Hartman Education Fund looked different, not publicly at first. The changes began in meetings Annie did not attend. Emergency deposit grants, student support coordinators, housing intervention, transportation funds, better partnerships with high school counselors, a rule that no student should lose aid because a form could not be completed on a phone. Laura Bennett sent Annie an update and called it program redesign. Evelyn called it finally using sense. Then William asked Annie to speak at the launch of the new initiative. She said no, not because she was afraid, though she was, because she did not want her pain turned into a fundraising centerpiece. William accepted the no. That mattered. A week later, Annie called him back. "If I speak, I'm not telling it like some sad little story where you saved me. I would not ask you to. I mean it. I know, and I get to say what the fund did wrong before." There was a pause. Then William said, "You should." So on a clear morning the following fall, Annie stood inside a renovated room near the same train station where William had found her. The space had once been leased to a luxury retailer, that stayed open less than a year. Now it held desks, chairs, shelves of donated coats, a small computer lab, and a coffee station Evelyn had personally inspected. A sign near the entrance read, "The Grace Annie Promise." Marlene sat in the front row with Lily, who wore a yellow dress and swung her feet under the chair. Evelyn sat beside them. Maya stood near the back with a clipboard. Laura Bennett spoke with Dr. Brooks near the coffee station. Charles Whitcomb was not on the board anymore. He had resigned quietly after discovering that the fund's new direction had more support than his objections. William introduced Annie with only one sentence. Annie Carter reminded this fund that opportunity is not real if the door only opens for students who already know the way in. Then he stepped aside. Annie walked to the front with her notes folded in one hand. She saw donors, teachers, social workers, students, a few reporters, and several older people who looked at her with the careful attention of those who had lived long enough to understand regret. She looked at William, then at her mother. "When I got my college acceptance letter," Annie began, "I thought the hard part was over." A few people smiled because they knew better. It wasn't. The hard part was finding out that a door can open and still be too expensive to walk through. I had grades. I had the letter. I had the work ethic people love to praise after a student succeeds. What I did not have was deposit money, stable housing, a laptop that worked for every form, or an adult who knew which office to call when the portal failed. She unfolded her notes, then decided not to look at them. I also had a family I loved, and a home I could not safely build my future inside. That is a hard sentence to say, especially in front of your mother. Marlene's eyes filled, but she nodded. My mother is here today because she did something harder than apologize. She stayed gone from what was hurting us. That took time. It still takes work. I'm proud of her. Marlene covered her mouth. Lily leaned against her side. Annie continued. Sometimes the door to college isn't locked because you're not good enough. Sometimes it's locked because poverty keeps stealing the key. Sometimes family guilt holds the key. Sometimes a form does. Sometimes a bus schedule does. Sometimes a man who thinks your future is an insult does. The room was quiet now. This program cannot fix every life. No program can. But it can stop pretending that tuition is the only problem. It can help with housing, food, transportation, emergency paperwork, counseling, and jobs that do not punish students for going to class. It can put help where students can actually reach it. She looked toward the entrance of the center. I was sitting outside this station when someone stopped. I wish the world did not work that way. I wish every student got seen before they broke down in public. But until that world exists, we can become the kind of people who stop. She folded her notes. Not to own someone's future. Not to feel generous. Just to help keep the door open. No one clapped right away. That was how Annie knew they had heard her. Then Evelyn began. Once. Firmly. The room followed. Afterward, a line formed near the intake desk. Not donors. Students. A boy with a backpack held together by duct tape. A young woman with a baby stroller. A mother in scrubs asking whether her son could speak to someone about deposits. Maya handed out forms and made jokes about how forms were rude but survivable. Annie stepped aside to breathe. William came to stand next to her. You did well. I told the truth. That is often the same thing. She looked at the sign. Grace. Annie Promise. You sure about the name? Yes. It's a lot to live up to. It is not a demand, he said. It is a reminder. Across the room, Lily had found Max, who had been allowed to attend against all reasonable policy. She wrapped both arms around his neck, while Evelyn pretended not to see the dog hair on her dress. Marlene approached Annie slowly. You were brave, Marlene said. Annie smiled. I was scared. I'm learning those can stand in the same room. Suawi. They hugged, not to erase the past, but to mark that it no longer had the only voice. Later that afternoon, after the reporters left and the coffee had gone cold, Annie walked outside alone. The station steps were busy with commuters. A man checked his watch. A woman balanced a toddler on one hip. A pair of students argued about train times. Near the edge of the steps stood a girl with a folder in her hands, staring at the help-wanted board newly posted by the station shops. She looked nervous. ready to leave before anyone could reject her. Annie walked over. "You looking for work?" The girl turned. "Maybe. I don't have much experience." Annie thought of a cold afternoon, a folded letter, and a dog who refused to keep walking. "That's all right," she said. "Come on. I know someone who actually hires people who need a chance." From inside the glass doors, William saw her. He did not call out. He only stood with his hands in his pockets, watching Annie do for someone else what the world had nearly failed to do for her. The trains kept arriving. The city kept moving. But one corner of the station had changed, and sometimes that was how justice began. Not with a speech loud enough to shake the walls, but with a door held open, a name remembered, and one person deciding not to walk past. The lesson of this story is that sometimes a person does not need to be saved by money alone. They need to be seen, heard, and given a real chance. Annie's dream was almost stolen by poverty, fear, and the silence of adults who should have protected her, but one man chose to stop instead of walking past. True kindness is not about owning someone's future. It is about helping them reach the door they already earned. And justice often begins quietly, when one person decides that another person's pain is no longer invisible. This video is a work of fiction created with the assistance of artificial intelligence. All characters, events, and situations are not real and do not represent any actual people or true stories. The content is intended for storytelling and emotional illustration only.